Our story begins in an unknown world, where the protagonist observes people holding swords and wearing some strange clothes clearly from another era. It even seems somewhat nostalgic at first, and as he observed all of that, he already felt familiar with the environment for some reason. But before the boy could continue reflecting alone, an unfamiliar receptionist calls out to him, asking a young man named Jinfrey Van Raid if he was there to register as an adventurer. Without wasting time, the protagonist says yes, while still feeling the breeze of already knowing that place and those people. His registration was then completed in just a few seconds, causing a blue screen to appear in front of him at that very instant. This startles the boy at first, but a sensation of deja vu fills his thoughts again. He then stares intently at the palm of his hand like a weirdo, startling the receptionist, as memories of his past life flood his mind, clarifying things a little. That was the fantasy world of Grand 7, the game the protagonist used to play in his past life, with the goal of traveling across all 7 seas to achieve the much-desired world peace. But something still didn't seem to make sense. Jinfrey Van Raid was just an ordinary person who dreamed of becoming an adventurer to earn money and help his family. Yet for some reason, he was back to life in the universe of his favorite game, turning his face of doubt into one of pure confidence. The receptionist, scared of the guy making faces in front of her, asks once again if he was okay. And with his ego through the roof, he tells her not to worry, for that was merely the excitement of a warrior, making it clear to the young woman that he was truly crazy. Jinfrey analyzes the system screen, trying to understand why his consciousness had retained the memories of his past life. But without finding a logical answer at that moment, he decides that he will simply use it to his advantage to progress. With a kind smile, the receptionist wishes him good luck as the boy steps into a portal, coming face to face with a breathtaking place that dazzles his eyes called the baptismal altar. Jinfrey is impressed by how the place is exactly like in his favorite game. And in just a few seconds, the boy looks to the side, finding himself alongside 4 other people in the game's tutorial stage. Everything seemed exactly the same, except for the fact that if he lost this time, he probably wouldn't have the option to continue. But that wasn't enough to shake his confidence, because the kid already had the entire game guide memorized in his head. At that moment, an announcement was made, finally starting the challenge, asking participants to choose their equipment. Jinfrey seems excited about this, while watching one of the participants rush ahead of the rest to grab the best weapon. The location had a fairly standard variety of medieval game options, including bows, swords, spears, and rapiers. The spear seemed to be the strongest item available, with 21 base attack. 2 of the 5 participants start arguing over who would get the item, while the other pair, instead of arguing, literally start brawling over the sword with 19 attack. But apparently, this was far more normal than expected, because according to what Jinfrey knew, his performance in the baptismal altar directly affected the game's job system, which was quite unfair for beginners since they had limitations if they didn't perform well. Even the protagonist remembered resetting the game repeatedly until he got a result he liked. As the participants finished making their choices, one of them notices that Jinfrey hadn't picked anything yet, but the protagonist couldn't care less about him, which makes the bald guy quite irritated. Jinfrey walks through the selection area, hands in his pockets, passing by all the remaining weapons, until he stops in front of a small common sword. Unlike the other weapons, this item had only 1 attack. The budget Saitama starts running his mouth again, telling Jinfrey how he wouldn't get a good job and blah blah blah. But without paying attention to the medieval Vin Diesel, the hero already seemed to have devised a plan far beyond what anyone could imagine, because the knowledge of a mere common mod from the game could never compare to the full game guide he had written down in his mind. And finally, he makes his choice, picking the warrior's sword in the tutorial. With that, the tutorial finally begins, lasting only 5 minutes. A few insects appear before them, and the player's objective is to defeat as many of these creatures as possible. With that said, all the adventurers get into battle positions. Jinfrey remembers that this monster was called the Winged Centipede, appearing only in the first stage of the game, having a paralyzing venom strong enough to knock out anyone there. The baldy mockingly asks the protagonist to at least try to stay alive until the end of the tutorial, but the boy, who simply doesn't understand why he was so annoyingly inconvenient, decides to just ignore him. The monsters begin their attacks from all directions against the group of adventurers. The boy starts to notice that even the movement of the monsters was similar to that in the game, deducing that if they were the same as in the game, their weak point must also be in the same place. One of the winged centipedes charges toward the protagonist, who decides to use the game's critical hit system to fight, drawing his sword from its sheath and aiming directly at the middle of the creature's body, delivering a critical strike that simply one-shots the monster. After that, he even strikes a stylish pose, Power Rangers style, impressing the rest of the tutorial participants, who had absolutely no faith in him. With the perfect strike, he prepares to continue, while the medieval ages version of the rock grumbles that it must have just been luck, unable to believe his eyes. And at that moment, we discover that besides abusing the game's critical hit system, the sneaky Jinfrey was also exploiting a bug that only existed in the tutorial. He explains that if you hit the creature's weak spot with that specific little sword, all your attacks would become one-hit kills. And with that in mind, the protagonist finds himself facing a swarm coming his way. But since only he knew about that strategy there, and to his surprise, it worked perfectly, the boy was confident. The other tutorial participants, unlike Jinfrey, seemed to be struggling a bit, while the baldy with the spear killed 2 monsters and immediately started showing off to everyone about how incredible he was, shouting that he would definitely get the best job after finishing the challenge. The protagonist instantly realizes that he was just trying to distract everyone to gain an advantage. And because he got irritated by that, he lost focus, giving an opportunity for one of the winged centipedes to attack. But the boy, who isn't dumb at all, dodges to the side with a simple and fluid movement, making the monster growl in frustration and charge at him again. At that moment, he realizes that this could be even more fun than was in the game during his past life, and he starts taking down all the monsters one by one without difficulty. The 5-minute timer finally runs out. We see the group analyzing their individual performances to find out what kind of job they could get based on their results. One of the participants was quite frustrated because he hadn't killed any monsters and wouldn't get any job as an adventurer. Even the baldy with the spear appears, shouting, "Wow, 15. I'm so incredible. Oh my god, appreciate my presence." And with a natural talent for being insufferable, he remembers to go and mock the protagonist. The hero is calmly analyzing his possibilities there, until the budget Saitama shows up, wanting to know his performance. For some strange reason, the protagonist still manages to be surprised by the baldy being inconvenient again. And when the guy looks at Jinfree's individual performance, he is simply in shock. The guy just can't believe it. Besides Jinfree being able to choose all the best jobs in the game, he had defeated 33 monsters with, quote-unquote, the worst weapon in the tutorial. Realizing he couldn't make fun of him, he just turns around, stammers a bit, and says, I can be a swordsman too. Okay. And even after being interrupted, the hero still congratulates the baldy before refocusing. He remembers that swordsman and summoner were considered the best jobs in the game by most people. With that in mind, the protagonist finally makes his choice, receiving an initial piece of equipment as a bonus for his first job, revealing that instead of going with the common choices, his profession would be that of a combiner. This choice shocks all the other tutorial participants. The baldy with the spear asks if the kid was stupid as usual, because that was literally one of the worst choices. But with just a mischievous little grin, Jinfree calmly opens his inventory, remembering that everything actually depended on the player using that profession. His real goal in defeating those 33 monsters was to collect a specific quantity of 3 items that could only be obtained in that tutorial map. And completely clueless, the baldy with the spear just stares in shock at the protagonist, realizing why he is, in fact, the protagonist. He begins mixing the 3 items with his shabby little short sword, since the combiner profession allowed him to mix specific items to create new things. And using his new skills, the short sword started transforming into something new. Everyone there was completely clueless, while Jinfree now held a weapon so powerful it could even break the very fundamentals of that game. Observing the new attributes of the weapon, which was now called Centipede. Its attack went from 1 to 66 with a critical skill that dealt triple damage if the user hit an opponent's weak point. There was actually a secret item in the game, something that probably only he knew about in that place. After the tutorial is finally completed, we discover that an adventurer's strength is determined by level and profession. The equipment is considered only a support tool, increasing a player's attack and defense. But some pieces of equipment went against the standard rule, known as secret equipment. Continuing his journey, Jinfree finally heads to the adventurer's city. Many people were walking along the main streets, where commerce seemed to be thriving. The place was also very familiar to the boy, but one appears, offering apples to the hero. He decides to buy one while thinking about his next challenge on a full stomach. The idea was quite simple. On every continent, there were rank S dungeons that needed to be cleared by the player. But to achieve that, you first needed to level up. Normally, people started with rank F dungeons, but the protagonist goes straight to a rank C one. Entering the dungeon, his goal was simple: defeat the local boss. Considering that to leave, he needed victory no matter what. Being only level 1, Jinfree remembers that this place was recommended for level 17 to level 30 players. But before he could continue thinking about how to handle the challenge with his still low defense, a level 17 monster appears, ready to attack. The protagonist summons his centipede and prepares for battle, 16 levels below a monster that normally wouldn't be a problem, knowing that if he got hit even once, he'd be done for. The demon plant attacks swiftly, but the protagonist already knew that combat pattern very well, knowing that after this quick attack, the monster would be vulnerable. He then leaps toward the plant, aiming at its weak spot, and easily defeats it by slicing it in 2. With that easy victory, the protagonist jumps 9 levels at once. His base attributes increase instantly. He uses his special points to maximize his defense. Jinfree is quite pleased that everything was going well so far. And with Centipede, the boy would now even be capable of entering rank B dungeons. But knowing that weapon very well, the hero understood that Centipede's true value had yet to be unlocked, deciding to level up a bit more while already heading toward the dungeon boss. And as he walked calmly through the forest, he started to notice that he was being surrounded by some creatures. 3 new monsters emerged, ready to strike. The creature was called Black Cobra, considered a local mini-boss, and it was extremely rare to find 3 of them together. Without giving him time to think, one of them charges at full speed, but Jinfree manages to dodge at the last moment. He already knew that the monster was very aggressive, almost getting caught off guard again by an attack from his blind spot. The boy jumps aside to dodge, and as soon as he lands back on the ground, he faces a double charge from the other 2 cobras. Even knowing their attack pattern, he still needed to stay calm to fight, remembering exactly where he needed to strike to land a critical hit. The boy leaps toward the neck of one of the cobras, but his attack is easily blocked, making him realize that for some reason, they were protecting themselves. This behavior was not at all normal compared to the creatures he knew from the game. One of them takes advantage of the moment and attacks him from behind, becoming the first monster to land a direct hit on the protagonist. With cold precision, he takes advantage of the close distance, and uses Centipede to defeat one of them with a clean vertical slash, rotating his torso in sync with the strike. Jinfree gains 3 more levels in the middle of battle after defeating one of the Black Cobras, but now he only had 8 HP left, suffering a severe wound. Thanks to his decision to max out his defense, he had ensured that he could tank up to 2 hits from the local monsters, and after having defeated enough enemies, he had unlocked his second ability for Centipede. The other 2 creatures try to take advantage of the fact that he was still on the ground after the previous attack, but he quickly reallocates his attributes, removing all his defense points and maximizing his speed. And in the blink of an eye, he defeats both in a single move. Centipede's new ability allowed his speed to increase tenfold, but only if his AP was low. The 2 monsters collapse to the ground defeated, while Jinfree uses his style points to say that, unfortunately, he couldn't die just yet, leveling up to level 17, which was the recommended level for the dungeon, and deciding to lean against a tree for a short rest before continuing. The boy analyzes whether it would be worth recovering his HP, but by doing so, he would lose Centipede's speed buff, deciding that he would finish the dungeon while injured since he already had the experience and knowledge necessary for it. Since this was no longer just a game, he realized that his wounds were very real. But without stopping to think, he heads toward the next enemy, landing another quick strike on the creature's weak point, striking his stylish pose as the monster falls behind him. It seemed like the hero had been targeting the weaker monsters to avoid risking his life unnecessarily. His goal was to accumulate as much experience as possible, but this wouldn't be an easy task, since he wanted to use his combiner skills to better prepare before the boss fight. Jinfree recalls the long list of required items, while continuing to defeat more local enemies without difficulty. All of this just for a rank D item seemed like a lot, reminding him that this game was hated by many in his past life for this exact reason. But complaining wouldn't help him at all, so he decides to gather the materials before facing the local boss. Some time passes inside the dungeon. Jinfree still hadn't even collected half of the materials he was looking for. So far, he had only gathered 3 of the 7 required items. However, a voice suddenly calls his name from behind, making the protagonist turn around to see what it was, and he comes face to face with someone who had grown up in the same village as him. This guy also seemed to know him, calling him the loser, as if it were his nickname. Hearing that, the protagonist remembers that this lubmouth was Julius, who had become an adventurer 2 or 3 years ago. Julius starts mocking him and his combiner profession, trying to show how superior he was, while telling his friend that Jinfree was the poorest person in the village and that he had no interest in befriending someone like him, casually exposing the tragic backstory of the protagonist as if it were nothing, not to mention how they treated him like a stray dog without feelings. Jinfree suddenly starts hearing a voice in his head, narrating his character's entire backstory from the game. But Julius interrupts his thoughts by threatening him for no reason, like any good shameless manhwa antagonist, trying to understand what he was even doing inside an advanced dungeon. But then all 3 of them hear a deafening roar coming from the forest nearby. The nameless side character immediately starts panicking on the spot, and the main boss of the dungeon appears, a level 31 Cyclops. Julius shouts at his friend, who's frozen in fear, telling him to run instead of standing there like an idiot. Meanwhile, the hero realizes that, unfortunately, he had already been marked as an enemy by the boss. The creature then raises its club, preparing a brutal attack, which completely annihilates the nameless side character in a single blow. At that moment, even the protagonist freezes, suffering a harsh reality check at the most critical moment of the dungeon. Julius also collapses to the ground, trembling with fear, and without wasting time, the Cyclops locks its gaze onto its next target. With such a massive level gap, Jinfree for the first time isn't feeling confident at all. But the boss doesn't care about anything, immediately launching another direct attack at the protagonist, who barely manages to dodge thanks to his extremely high speed. Even so, he had already been marked as the Cyclops' opponent, preventing him from escaping the battle and leaving him with no choice but to fight. The monster lets out another roar, raising its club once again, unleashing another devastating strike that luckily just barely misses the hero, since Jinfree already knew the boss's attack patterns and had enough speed to dodge. His so-called acquaintance, Julius, who was still sitting there in shock, is completely stunned by the protagonist's skills. Without believing in the scene before his eyes, the confrontation was quite frenetic, and the boy realized that simply running non-stop wouldn't solve anything. The Cyclops club struck the ground again, making the entire earth tremble, creating an opening for the boy, who regained his composure and climbed onto the club, making the boss even more furious. Jinfree jumped onto its left hand, quickly gaining momentum toward the sky, stopping just above the monster's back, leaving it extremely confused. His idea was clearly to strike precisely at the monster's nape, and using his own fall to gain momentum, the protagonist went all in to land his next strike with maximum force. But since life isn't a fairy tale, not even that had an effect on the beast. Its only effect was making the monster even angrier, who then tried to hit Jinfree by striking its own back but ended up being too slow. A battle like this, without being fully prepared, certainly wouldn't be easy. Julius, who had been talking about how incredible everything was, only watched while crouched in a bush, observing the person he had underestimated fighting impressively on his own. He tried to understand why the boy was that fast, while the Cyclops didn't stop attacking for even a moment. Jinfree, unable to cause damage to the beast, remembered the only alternative he could use, and began searching for the missing ingredients, until he realized that all of them were together next to the bush where Julius had cowardly hidden. Without thinking twice, he dashed for the items, collecting the missing ingredients, and searching for water in the surroundings. With everything in hand, he was finally ready, and using his combiner abilities. A poison was created in a purple flask. Julius knew that the monster wouldn't fall to a simple poison, and tried to warn his acquaintance that it wouldn't work. But using the items collected from the snakes earlier, he created an even stronger poison, leaving Julius surprised by the abilities he had previously underestimated. Jinfrey opened the flask with the poison and combined it with his centipede, which changed shape once more, revealing its true blade form. His cowardly acquaintance even forgot for a moment about the giant Cyclops that was ready to brutally defeat them right there. But with his confidence restored, the protagonist returned to the battlefield. The club was raised high once again. However, its attack failed to hit our hero. Using all his speed in a formidable manner, he waited for another mistake from the beast and dodged with a simple movement from its most ferocious attack, jumping once again near its nape, preparing an even more devastating attack, which surprised the Cyclops for the second time, landing multiple quick slashes in the same spot, forcing a boss to roar, this time in pain. The beast even tried to use its high resistance to counteract the poison's effect, but that wouldn't be enough this time. Desperate, the Cyclops tried to rid itself of the centipede's effect, over and over again without stopping, but slowly its legs began to weaken, creating another opening for the protagonist to strike, and finally finish the battle, preparing his blade with calmness and precision, striking the monster right in the eye, delivering a direct critical hit, forcing it to kneel on the ground in pain. Jinfrey landed on solid ground, striking a hero's pose as the Cyclops was finally defeated, while Julius couldn't believe what he had just witnessed, asking himself if this was really the same person he had known before. With the tension fading, the two locked eyes, and the bully Julius ran off desperately, afraid of being the next victim. Relieved that his plan had worked, Jinfrey finally lowered his guard. Thinking about the next step of his journey, Jinfrey opened his inventory, having earned 350,000 gold coins, a rather high amount for a boss of that level, finally allowing him to help his beloved mother as he had intended. But aside from that, the main reward was a material, the Cyclops Eye of Rarity C. Extremely disgusting to carry a dead eye in his pocket, right? But with it, he could create his next secret equipment. Leaving the dungeon, Jinfrey moved to another location called Flat Plain, a place that gave him a feeling of nostalgia. That game had the ultimate goal of defeating the demon god across all 7 continents, starting with that one. But for that, he needed to find another secret equipment, and because of that, a Cyclops Eye was necessary. A pack of monsters that looked like wolves appeared next, ready to attack, but they were easily defeated by the protagonist, who decided to level up a bit more before continuing, defeating all the demon gods, creating a world of peace, earning enough money for his beloved mother, while silencing everyone who had ever dared to doubt him. This was his plan, and for that, he only needed to become stronger. A short time passed and rumors about a young adventurer who had defeated 33 monsters in the tutorial phase spread. The name Jinfrey Van Raid was starting to become known throughout the world. Gossip about who the mysterious boy was and what he looked like echoed through all the cities. But Jinfrey, who had no idea about any of this, continued calmly leveling up on his own. The items he needed had already been collected. However, one was still missing. Cobalt bird feathers were not from a monster considered rare, but they were still what he lacked. There were a total of 7 dungeons on the first continent, and among them, 6 ranged from rank F to rank A. The last one, where the demon god resided, was rank S. The place he was in had the highest chance of spawning the cobalt bird, yet he still hadn't managed to find one. In this situation, the protagonist decided to take a short break and head to the city to gather some information on the matter, walking calmly through the city while looking for a shop. One of the stores caught his attention for some reason. He tried to open the door, but screams were heard from inside. Some thieves appeared, robbing the place and running quickly outside, forcibly pushing aside everyone in their escape route. One of them even shoved a small girl without any concern, but the hero managed to prevent her from suffering serious injuries by catching her just before she hit the steps of a staircase, leaving him slightly annoyed with the scoundrels. The girl's mother thanked the protagonist for his help, while the group of vagabonds fled. The owner of the grocery store appeared next, grating his teeth in anger for being robbed, and started chatting with the boy about the group of thieves known as the Mountain Dogs Guild. This group had turned that region into a territory ruled solely by them. Hearing this, Jinfrey began to understand why he still hadn't found the item he was missing. While listening to the merchant's lament, who deeply saddened, vented about being forced to close his shop for a few days. Watching everything in complete silence, he began to analyze whether it was worth taking on an entire guild alone. But because of the scene he had witnessed moments earlier, he already had the anger to do it. Without thinking twice, he followed the trail left by the shameless criminals. Searching through the alleys and back streets of the city, Jinfrey finally seemed to have found them. They were talking about how they had managed to rob most of the local businesses. And hearing this, the chance of some cobalt bird feathers being among the stolen items was quite high. Observing the place more attentively, his eyes finally landed on what he was looking for, small glass jars with a blue tint. The thieves also started discussing the adventurer who had broken the record by defeating 33 monsters, as mentioned in the news. Jinfrey was so focused on devising a plan to steal from the thieves that he didn't even realize the conversation was about him. But before he could continue planning, one of the thieves appeared right behind him. The scoundrel pointed a knife at the boy, who hadn't noticed his presence due to his stealth ability. Trying to avoid direct confrontation, the protagonist attempted to come up with some excuses. But a thief knows another thief, right? And with his Lazi disguise completely exposed, he had no way to escape. With his weapon, the man attempted a quick slash, but Jinfrey managed to dodge. quickly summoning his centipede into his right hand, while easily evading another strike from the thug. Jinfrey took advantage of the bandit's advance and kicked his supporting foot, causing him to fall toward the ground while knocking him out with a punch to the back of the neck. The sound of the fight caught the attention of the other bandits, who noticed a stranger snooping around. Trying to avoid even more combat, Jinfrey simply decided to tell the truth, that he was only looking for some cobalt bird feathers, while wielding an extremely deadly blade in his hand, a detail that was obviously very important when claiming he didn't want to fight anyone. And now certain that he wouldn't be able to get out of there without a fight, he stopped pretending to be weak and decided to charge in with brute force. The Thieves Guild drew their weapons. One of them rushed toward Jinfrey, but his attack was easily dodged by the protagonist, who struck his nose directly with the blunt side of his blade, while all the others stared at the boy, listening to their friend scream in pain. Another bandit attempted to attack him from behind, but Jinfrey ducked, dodging the slash, then immediately delivered a direct kick to the thug's chest while spinning his body. Another thief lunged forward with a spear thrust, but the protagonist easily grabbed his weapon with one hand, pulling the man closer and landing a punch right in the pit of his stomach, a blow so strong that the system of that world considered it a critical hit. Trying to take advantage of his blind spot, the bandit wielding a giant axe swung an upward slash. Squatting effortlessly, the protagonist dodged again and struck his chin with the hilt of the centipede. He tried to explain that he wasn't really in the mood to fight, staring at four thieves completely defeated on the ground without severe injuries. Jinfrey once again tried to explain that he only wanted some cobalt bird feathers, but for the first time he was caught off guard by one of the thieves, who used his stealth ability, almost managing to land a precise strike on the boy, who blocked the attack at the last moment. This guy seemed far more skilled than the others, possessing the same stealth ability as the first scoundrel, and he was the same one who had pushed the little girl down the stairs earlier. Both locked eyes, facing each other, and the man introduced himself as the famous submaster of the guild, Masuo. Trying to instill fear in the boy with his name, he claimed that Jinfrey had surely heard of him before. However, the protagonist responded that he had actually never heard of him. This left the great submaster Masuo furious, deciding to attack once again. The hero noticed that the weapon used by the submaster was clearly of a much higher rank than the others, but Masuo ignored everything he said, continuing to threaten him with his nonsense, while stating that the boy had probably obtained that sword purely by luck. He explained that what truly mattered were an adventurer's profession skills, not their equipment. Hearing all of this, Jinfrey didn't even bother to put effort into blocking the submaster's attacks, dodging almost without moving as a powerful slash struck the ground, slightly cracking it. Masuo continued mocking the boy's abilities, pointing a finger in his face and commenting on how the kid was still wearing tutorial armor. But for some reason, his weapon was extremely rare, saying that Jinfrey was surely weak, but his weapon was truly strong. He remarked that the protagonist had probably never fought against an experienced adventurer before, summoning several floating daggers while continuing to spew nonsense at the boy, and launching them all at once toward the protagonist, but they were easily deflected by Jinfrey. Masuo continued explaining that when it comes to battles between adventurers, the first thing to do is analyze the opponent's skills to gain an advantage from the start. Just by looking at Jinfrey's clothes, he already knew that the boy was nothing more than a mere combiner, and because of that, he only needed to focus on the movements of the sword he wielded. He then challenged the protagonist to try and guess what profession he possessed. Because without determining his profession, Jinfrey wouldn't be able to predict what abilities he would use in combat. However, since the protagonist had a walkthrough of the game inside his head, he simply didn't care about that, casually saying that the guy was just a common thief. Seeing such blatant disrespect toward him, Submaster Masuo lost his temper and shouted that he was a summoner, one of the two strongest classes introduced in the tutorial. Jinfrey started feeling sorry for the guy, who thought he was powerful just because of that, trying not to forget that if he made a mistake there against Masuo, he would surely lose his life. Deciding that he needed to end the fight quickly to avoid falling into his own ego like before, he then charged forward at high speed with an attack, but before he could strike Masuo, two bandits with the same stealth ability once again caught him off guard from behind, forcing the protagonist to evade the attacks with an acrobatic flip, narrowly avoiding a direct hit to his stomach from one of them. Using his dodge to get closer, he struck a blow with the hilt of the centipede directly to the vulnerable parts of the submaster, who only realized it after being hit precisely, taking a super critical hit, letting out a scream of pain so loud that it shattered the windows of the surrounding buildings. With a bit of foam coming out of his mouth, his lackeys rushed toward Masuo to check if he was okay. Jinfrey tried to apologize for what he had done to the beloved submaster of the Mountain Dogs Guild, and took advantage of the moment to create an eerie atmosphere over the entire gang of thugs. Threatening the rest of them, he demanded they hand over the cobalt bird feathers unless they wanted to end up like Masuo. The thieves immediately decided to comply with the boy's orders, but in the background, several other people suddenly appeared, pointing at the hero, commenting that the boy was probably from a rival guild, leaving the protagonist a little frustrated with the unnecessary trouble, and being completely surrounded once again by even more people. Some of the bandits couldn't believe that all that chaos had been caused by just one person, as they noticed Masuo lying on the ground completely defeated. They tried to understand what had happened, doubting that he could have been beaten by a kid and assuming that Jinfrey must have defeated him while he was drunk. Hearing all these absurd assumptions, the hero was astonished, until a voice was heard from the back. This man was clearly the strongest in the guild. All the thieves ran toward him, calling him master, quickly explaining the situation to him. While waiting for them to finish talking, Jinfrey began analyzing who this man could be. until the man finally understood the situation. Observing his ally Mazuo completely defeated on the ground, the two locked eyes fiercely, and the man then asked which guild the kid belonged to. The boy said he wasn't part of any and was there alone, and this surprised the master of the thieves. Right after hearing this, he let out a few laughs, saying that he liked the kid and that he could join his crew, an invitation that left the protagonist speechless. He explained that normally he would have beaten the kid up, but since he had managed to defeat Masuo, he was definitely not weak. Even inviting Jinfrey to have some drinks at the bar. The protagonist rejected his offer immediately, slapping the man's hand away with disdain, explaining that he had only come there for cobalt bird feathers, belittling their guild and demanding what he came to get, something that clearly did not please the master of thieves, who trembled with rage. The boy continued throwing truths in his face about how his members took advantage of the weak, and the man in an instant pulled out a giant axe, preparing a quick attack, delivering a lethal blow to the ground, shattering a large portion of the area around him, creating a cloud of dust just from the impact of his weapon. He then said that he had changed his mind, because it was the first time he had seen someone so reckless, and that the boy would become his subordinate by force. Jinfrey knew that, judging by the previous attack, this guy was probably not just a common thief, as he dodged another strike from him, who took advantage of his previous movement to follow up with another axe swing from below to above. The protagonist flipped backward with a somersault, knowing that if this opponent used profession abilities, dealing with him could be very troublesome, meaning he had to act fast, charging forward while unleashing a lateral attack, bending his legs to crouch and gain momentum at the same time, surprising the man for the first time, who was struck with a direct hit on the right side of his abdomen. The attack had not managed to defeat the master, but now he was also aware that he couldn't underestimate the kid in front of him, who stared back at him with the same intensity. The man then unequipped his axe, leaving the protagonist confused for a moment, until he finally realized what his profession was. The man was a fighter. He strengthened his body for combat, tripling his physical attributes for 3 minutes upon unequipping his main weapon. The guild began to cheer, seeing their master fighting seriously. Both locked eyes once again, until the master threw a jab with his right hand, aiming directly at the protagonist's face. However, the kid managed to dodge in time, but the man's punch shattered the wall behind him. Knowing that one of his punches could obliterate him in a single hit, the man continued his assault, preparing another jab, while shouting at the boy, trying to intimidate him. But Jinfrey was unfazed and stared right back at him fiercely, then striking a critical hit with a centipede to the man's stomach. With that blow, the master of thieves screamed in pain, leaving all his lackeys worried. As he collapsed to the ground, defeated, the scoundrels were left in shock as one of them commented on whether this kid was really the adventurer from the news, finally realizing who Jinfrey actually was, as he stared at them without any fear, throwing the thieves into complete panic. Realizing that they had been fighting against the protagonist of the story, the hero then tried to speak to them, but before he could continue talking, they all ran away in fear, leaving him confused as to why everyone knew his name, deciding to simply grab the cobalt bird feathers and return the stolen items to the merchants. Afterward, the protagonist went to the rank B dungeon, defeating the local boss with ease, and walked up to an altar. Jinfrey stopped for a moment, commenting that he felt the absence of the fallen goddess statue. If he could solve the statue's mechanism, he would obtain the second secret equipment. He then took some items from his inventory, placing the Cyclops eye on the statue's face and the feather on its right wing, finally activating this secret mechanism. The statue began to shed tears of joy, which started falling into a golden chalice. Finally obtaining his item, named Lucifer's Halo, it possessed 2 passive abilities, mind reading and magical perception. Having those abilities, it was easy to understand why the challenge was so difficult. Jinfrey observed the statue once more, feeling happy for earning his reward, equipping it without wasting any more time. It felt quite strange to have that on his head, because he felt like a spirit now, but he decided not to worry about it as long as people didn't think the item was too overpowered. Now with 2 secret equipments, he prepared for his first rank S dungeon. Arriving at the dungeon's location, all of his excitement was instantly shattered. Agni Volcano could only be explored by a group of 7 people or more, and there were no groups recruiting members at the moment. After defeating a rank S dungeon, it would respawn somewhere else on the same continent. Whoever defeated it would also receive a title that allowed them to advance to the second continent. Jinfrey was eager to move forward as soon as possible, and while trying to think of a plan, some people noticed the presence of a group led by Freyna, the Flame Mage. The boy became intrigued by this person, observing the group that everyone in the room was talking about. At that moment, Lucifer's Halo activated the mind-reading ability, revealing that Freyna was eager to enter the dungeon but was still missing one member, which made our protagonist excited again. He approached as the group conversed, and with all the politeness in the world, he asked if he could join them. Everyone immediately found that Halo on his head strange. Even without the item, he already knew that everyone thought he was weird. One of the members explained that they weren't planning to explore the dungeon just yet and asked him to leave. Reading his mind, the hero realized that the real reason was that their missing member was hospitalized, and because of that, they had all been stuck there until now. But with the boldest attitude possible, he said he would prefer a response from their leader, since she seemed a little anxious as well. However, the reason for her anxiety was that her father had been missing for a month in a rank S dungeon. Freyna didn't even respond to our dear hero, while Jinfrey once again felt her anxiety, which in reality was her concern that the halo on the weird kid's head might be something more serious. The boy composed himself, apologized, and introduced himself, explaining that he also wanted to enter the dungeon as soon as possible. Upon hearing his name, they remembered that this weirdo was actually the guy from the news, the one who had defeated 33 monsters in the tutorial map. Shocked that he was just some strange kid, The protagonist felt a little awkward, while Frana noticed that he seemed to be reading her mind somehow, as if he possessed something special. It was as if that boy had already been through a lot. Because of that, the girl finally seemed motivated to explore the dungeon, and she responded, saying he could join their group. But if he turned out to be useless, he would be left behind. Jinfrey finally felt more at ease and set off the challenge. The group walked through the volcanic lands of Agni Volcano. They placed our protagonist at the front of the group because if anyone had to take the hit, it would be him. One of the other members asked if it was really okay to trust the kid, as he didn't seem reliable. But Frana said that if he was useful, he would be a great help, and if not, at least he could serve as bait. Another boy named Arthur approached the protagonist and asked if he was really the guy from the headlines. But since the hero didn't care about any of that, he couldn't give a proper answer, which made Arthur doubt him even more. Another member commented that it had to be a lie because there was no way this kid was strong. He was just a weirdo with a halo on his head. With all this judgment, our dear hero was already getting annoyed with his new group. But before he could keep overthinking it, his passive ability, Magical Perception, activated. Where he spotted several monsters ahead, charging toward them in a pack. Jinfrey shouted for the shield guy to start protecting everyone because things were about to get crazy. The guy didn't understand anything at first, but the boy urged him to hurry, saying the eruptions were about to start. Not believing the kid, he started talking nonsense again, until a volcano near them actually erupted, and the guy was left in shock as usual. The boy shouted again for the guy to protect everyone, as they all noticed a rain of flaming rocks falling toward them. The shield guy finally decided to act and stop messing around using his reflective guard ability, creating a barrier around the entire group. But due to the rain of flaming rocks, they still needed to wait for a few moments in place. Frana asked everyone to stay still, taking charge of the situation by herself. She then prepared to cast one of her spells called Meteor Ember, creating a giant magic circle beneath her group's feet, pointing her staff upward. And with just the impact of her magic, she pushed the entire rain of stones away with the force of the wind. Everyone fell silent, looking at her, while the protagonist was already starting to be impressed by her abilities. However, a crack formed in the ground beneath their feet, causing the terrain to collapse completely in a matter of seconds. Arthur almost fell into the hole that had formed in the ground, but thanks to our hero's quick reflexes, he managed to grab him by the wrist. The two then looked down into the abyss below them. However, the rocks continued to crumble, causing Jinfrey to also slip into the hole along with Arthur, while both tried to think of a way to save themselves. They crashed hard onto something soft, that something being a level 38 creature called Cotton Bat, which had been peacefully sleeping. The kid remembered that his new secret item granted him a lot of luck, and perhaps that was why they hadn't died. But he had spoken too soon because he had forgotten that the beast was no longer asleep. Telling Arthur that they should get off the monster quickly, they stepped away and began to face the bat. The protagonist explained some of the creature's abilities, one of them being impact absorption, and because of that, their fall might have amplified its power even more. Arthur pulled out his humble little dagger, saying he didn't need the basics explained to him, and the hero warned that the fight was about to begin. The bat let out a deafening screech, so strong that it sent some rocks flying toward them through the sound waves, but the protagonist dodged them, saving his companion. Trying to make Arthur take him seriously, Jinfrey raised his voice and drew his centipede. Arthur, looking at his situation, realized that if not for the protagonist, he would already be dead, understanding the real danger of battling in a rank S dungeon. While he was thinking about that, the boy defeated the huge monster effortlessly, without even understanding what had just happened. The only thing he knew was that the kid had hit-killed the bat without even trying. Frana, from above, cast one of her spells, allowing her to confirm that her companion was still alive. The woman, seeing the whole situation, began to realize little by little that Jinfrey was truly someone different. Some members asked if they should go down to get Arthur, but Frana stopped them, saying that would only drain the group's energy, reminding everyone of the real reason they were there: to defeat the demon god. And since they all had the same ultimate goal, it was only a matter of time before they reunited, asking them not to worry about Arthur, as he was also her brother, personally trained by her. Meanwhile, the hero and Arthur talked for a bit, and the protagonist discovered they were looking for their father in the dungeon. With tensions easing, they finally decided to move forward. Arthur asked if they wouldn't return to the surface to follow the normal path, but Jinfrey warned him that at his current level, he wouldn't be able to face anything and would just end up dead. And because of that, he was going to take a break to level up a bit further down, inviting Arthur to join him if he really wanted to get stronger. Arthur followed him, excited about the idea, but was shocked by the scene before his eyes, where several flaming bone birds were gathered in a flock. All of the birds were even higher level than the bat, making it very problematic to defeat them all at once. However, the protagonist smirked mischievously, drawing his centipede, swiftly cutting through several of them in an instant. Arthur let his guard down, shocked by the protagonist's strength, and one of the birds tried to attack him from his blind spot, but he dodged, falling to the ground right after, and got up, regaining his focus, pulling his bow from his pocket, aiming a fatal shot at the bird's skull. That hit the creature precisely. Since it was just one bird and not the entire flock, that wasn't a problem, because in a one-on-one fight, he could handle himself. Arthur then decided to check how Jinfrey was doing, and as he turned around, he realized that the rest of the creatures had already been wiped out. The protagonist, who was already munching on the drops from the animals, even offered some to Arthur, noticing that he was eating way too fast. But for some reason, he needed to eat 50 to gain a mysterious buff. But before he could continue his meal, something began approaching them. A rather large fire salamander. It was a local miniboss of the dungeon called Salamander, at level 45. Jinfree started feeling a bit sick from all the food he had eaten, which ended up reducing his attributes by 30% after he vomited. Arthur just stood there watching that pathetic scene, while the protagonist explained that it was a subspecies that had evolved by eating humans, significantly boosting its attributes. The salamander, not caring about their conversation, attacked with its fiery tail, hitting Arthur directly and launching him against the cave wall. The boy became worried, but Arthur got up and assured him he was fine. The protagonist then decided to take the lead in the battle, facing the miniboss as usual. The boy noticed that maybe the miniboss also had an attribute debuff from having eaten something recently, and the salamander suddenly started vomiting. A human skeleton fell from its body, along with some strange items. That was already expected by Jinfree, who knew the game's lore. But Arthur, seeing that scene, went into a state of panic, becoming completely paralyzed. The protagonist sarcastically challenged the miniboss to a fight before it could vomit again, while Arthur collapsed in tears in the background, calling out for his father. The passive ability of the halo activated, and the hero began to sense a sudden murderous intent coming from his companion, who stared at the monster with a completely eerie expression. Arthur lunged forward, wielding two small daggers in each hand, managing to grab the salamander's attention. Jinfree tried to tell him to calm down, but Arthur was struck again by the same attack, being thrown back with even more force, yet without losing the intense rage burning in his heart at that moment. He quickly got up and adjusted his stance. Seeing all of this, Jinfree decided he had to step in, ordering the boy to get a hold of himself. But Arthur, completely blinded by his desire for revenge, asked his companion to let him go, but Jinfree refused. Yelling, he asked what the hell would happen to the rest of Arthur's family if he also died there out of stubbornness, making him snap back to reality and realize the real danger of their current situation. The protagonist tried to continue explaining that he didn't need to fight alone, but Arthur remained enraged, finally revealing that the skeleton the salamander had vomited out was actually his father, the one he and his sister had been searching for. The Hell detected Arthur's emotions shifting as he collapsed emotionally from within. In that instant, Arthur apologized to Jinfree for yelling like that, then turned back to the salamander. Jinfree then asked Arthur if his profession was that of a hunter, wanting to know if he could use the war cry ability and what items he had in his inventory. Arthur said that besides his hunter's items, he also had cotton bat feathers for some unknown reason. Jinfree then explained a little about the hunter class's passive ability to collect materials, and then revealed that he had come up with a plan. If things went right, they could defeat the salamander together. With both characters aligned and deciding to work as a team, the battle resumed. A tense atmosphere slowly built up in the area. Arthur controlled himself as he looked at the monster that had devoured his father, while the salamander stared at the protagonist, who asked his companion to buff him with War Cry. Arthur then began casting his magic, boosting Jinfree's attributes by 30% for 5 minutes. The salamander started to sense something was off, while Arthur handed over the cotton bat feathers to his companion, who, now with a refreshed stomach, was ready for battle, charging rapidly toward the miniboss. The salamander was a monster with an abundance of health, and because of that, it was much easier to defeat it with multiple participants attacking together. But since that wasn't an option, the boy began executing rapid slashes to poison the monster, which seemed to be highly effective. Meanwhile, Arthur also shot arrows straight into the creature's forehead. Because the hero already knew the mob, he was aware that this was his weak point. The protagonist was grateful to have someone attacking from a distance, since dealing with that creature as a melee fighter alone would have been difficult. Arthur kept firing his arrows, while Jinfree continued delivering slashes with difficulty. After a few moments, the salamander seemed to be on the verge of collapsing, but instead of falling, its berserker mode was activated, reducing its base attributes by another 30%. The heat wave it emitted was so intense that Arthur could feel its presence even from a distance, while the hero charged forward once again, holding the bat feather in his left hand, deciding to use that moment to his advantage. The enraged miniboss lunged at full force, but the protagonist easily blocked its attack with the feather. In berserker mode, not only was the monster more vulnerable, but its weak point also changed, now being located on its front legs. Already aware of this, Arthur shot an arrow at one of the legs, while the boy also attacked. The miniboss screamed in pain from the injuries, and the protagonist realized they only needed a little more time to defeat it. The salamander began trembling from exhaustion, and the two paused their attacks for a brief moment. Jinfree noticed that the flames on its body had weakened, which was a sign that the salamander was in a critical state. But due to its regenerative ability, the salamander would soon recover, making Arthur realize how monstrous this miniboss was, the same one that had defeated his father. And if their plan failed, they would both be at an extreme disadvantage, needing to end this battle quickly. The boy shouted to Jinfree that he was ready for the final attack, and upon hearing this, the protagonist prepared for the final charge, drawing the salamander's attention. It attempted to bite down on the boy with a downward lunge, but instead it was struck by a precise blow from the centipede, which made it scream in agony. Holding the bat feather, the boy sensed that this was the perfect moment, throwing the item into the air while shouting for Arthur not to miss his target. The feather quickly aligned with the salamander's face, but for Arthur, the long-awaited moment felt like it was happening in slow motion. He then took his shot. At that moment, missing was impossible for him, hitting the feather perfectly, and pushing it into the salamander's body through its mouth. He watched the scene to see if Jinfree's plan had worked, while the boy calmly started counting down 3, 2, 1, until the monster was devastated by an explosion of energy from within its body. Finally being defeated, defeated by the duo of warriors. That item tripled all absorbed damage due to its secret effect, causing an extremely massive attack on the opponent. With the mini-boss finally defeated, the battle came to an end. Arthur and Jinfrey waited for the rest of the group at the peak of a mountain, both in complete silence. Until a voice could be heard, his sister finally found them, asking if her little brother was okay. Without saying a word, he simply held onto a sword, and his sister realized that the item was their father's sword. Receiving the heartbreaking news, the two embraced in mourning, while Franna comforted her brother, telling him that he had done his best. But the boy explained that in reality the hero had done almost everything, making the group turn their attention to Jinfrey as he prepared a grave for the fallen man. The group fell silent once more until they noticed what he was doing and decided to help him. Placing the warrior's sword in his newly made grave, the two siblings bid him farewell with a prayer together. And in that moment, no words needed to be spoken. Jinfrey also began to recall past moments in his life where his mother appeared at the door shouting, bringing bad news about their father. But Franna interrupted his thoughts and thanked him for everything he had done. She tried to lift little Arthur's spirits, but now he had come to recognize his own limits and acknowledge Jinfrey as a great warrior. The rumors about his achievements were definitely not lies. Even the shield guy now respected him, but not wanting to be the center of attention. He reminded everyone of their real objective. The demon god Helmburrows still needed to be defeated. Franna regained her combat stance, and the group continued their journey. Some common monsters were defeated by them, without much effort since they were all working together. Upon reaching the top of the volcano, they began to wonder where the final challenge was, until suddenly, an explosion erupted out of nowhere. Everyone turned to observe the scene, until the boss finally appeared. Helmburrows, level 50, a gigantic creature. He roared fiercely at the group, forcing them to cover their ears to avoid serious damage. The pressure from that monster was overwhelming. The demon asked if they had come there to perish, and Jinfrey warned the group to retreat from the first attack. Franna, realizing that the protagonist was right, ordered everyone to fall back, but the boy didn't take a single step backward, looking confidently at his new companions, as he was engulfed by a rain of fire caused by the monstrous boss. Even while shielding themselves, the group could feel the extreme heat. Arthur shouted for his new friend's name, but only smoke could be seen. The boss grew confident, believing he had obliterated the boy, while everyone else watched from a distance. But Helmburrows began to sense that something was off, because the protagonist hadn't even taken his hands out of his pockets yet. Jinfrey continued staring at him, and that was because of the buff he had received from consuming 50 birds earlier, which left Helmburrows impressed by the boy. Jinfrey kept provoking the demon god, showing no fear in his eyes, while his group sighed in relief. Even the flame mage was speechless. The protagonist knew he had 7 minutes of fire resistance to fight, but even so, his life was still being drained by the attacks. He could keep up his cool pose, but the truth was that he was already at his limit, ready to activate his ability called Godspeed. While gripping his beloved blade, Helmburrows grew excited about the challenge, and prepared one of his main attacks. The group of adventurers felt the atmosphere becoming increasingly worse. Trying to understand how that was even possible, Franna ordered everyone to hide to avoid the next attack. Even with equipment specially designed to withstand high temperatures, a single attack from Helmburrows was enough to defeat them. Arthur, seeing this situation, wondered how Jinfrey was still standing. Not only that, but he was still provoking the demon god as if he were nothing. Helmburrows slowly fell into the boy's taunts, deciding to take the fight more seriously with every passing moment. The boy remained standing in the same spot, and Helmburrows sank into the lava of the volcano. Seeing this, the protagonist readied his centipede, adjusting his stance for close combat. Recalling the walkthrough he had memorized in his mind, he only needed to be careful of one single attack, which was the special move launched directly at him at that exact moment. But without retreating, he blocked the monster's attack. The sheer shockwave from their clash sent rocks flying into the air. All the group members could do was watch. Helmburrows grew more and more impressed with the young boy. Jinfrey had genuinely piqued his interest. Then he leaped out of the volcano, ready for a more direct confrontation this time. The demon god quickly soared into the air, challenging the boy to block his next attack as well. Franna couldn't even understand where that voice was coming from, while Arthur grew increasingly worried about his new friend. But Jinfrey remained there as if he had accepted the challenge. He then closed his eyes, and Helmburrows' silhouette appeared behind the group. But his only target was the protagonist, who remained with his eyes shut. Arthur realized it was a trap. However, thanks to his magical perception, Jinfrey dodged the boss's attack with an effortlessly smooth movement. While everyone watched the epic battle unfold, Helmburrows continued attacking without hesitation, telling the boy that he truly had great instincts. But in reality, it wasn't instinct. It was the battle patterns stored in his memory from his past life. The demon god even commented on the boy's arrogance for being extremely lucky, challenging him once again, saying that he would never be able to harm him. Jinfrey kept provoking his enemy without a hint of fear, while trying to locate him with his magical perception to counterattack at full speed. He only needed to do what he had already done millions of times before. And with Helmburrows appearing behind him again, Arthur tried to help his friend even from afar. But before the demon god could land his next strike, the hero had vanished from the range of his eyes, now in freefall directly above his opponent. Calm as a Buddhist monk, and as deadly as death itself, executing a clean, downward slash. Being wounded for the first time, Helmburrows tried to understand what had happened, while hearing the protagonist call him a puppy, asking with a grin on his face if he still doubted his abilities. The adventurer boasted, saying he wasn't about to back down. His opponent grew furious upon hearing those words. The adventurers watching the battle were amazed by the situation. Immediately after, the Cerberus threatened the protagonist, saying he would finish him in an instant. However, the hero didn't care at all. He was only curious about the use of the word mission coming from the monster, as he wasn't used to that in this world. However, there is no time to think about such useless things. Both prepare to start another clash of attacks, with the monster jumping at the adventurer. But the canine is caught off guard as the protagonist pierces through him with his sword. That was a critical hit. The monster truly felt that one. The Cerberus tries to understand how that boy is able to dodge his attacks so easily. Meanwhile, the protagonist simply celebrates having landed a critical hit. A system window opens, informing that Helmbarrows is seriously poisoned, and he calls this kind of hero's tactic a dirty trick. However, the adventurer retorts, saying that such a label would fit the monster itself better, because the monster was focusing on attacking the weaker ones instead of facing someone of his own caliber. Everyone around remains astonished and paralyzed by the protagonist's immense skill. Meanwhile, the blonde reflects on how it is possible for someone to face a demon god completely alone. The adventurer calls the boss a stupid dog and tells him to keep eating dust because he will perish in 5 minutes. The boss becomes extremely enraged and his roar echoes throughout the entire place, with the wolf bellowing that the hero should know his place, which is underground. Just the sheer force of the monster's roar forces the surrounding adventurers to hold on to avoid being blown away, even having to close their eyes to avoid being hit by debris, unable to approach. The knight then orders everyone to evacuate the area as the situation is becoming too serious. The redhead laments not being able to continue fighting while watching the battle from afar. A blast of fire launched by the monster heads straight for Jinfrey, but this causes him to lose sight of him. However, there stands the hero still in front of him. The adventurer wonders about this attack as it was only used once in the original game, unlike what just happened. Then the Cerberus claims that the hero is using some kind of magic to detect his attacks. However, Jin simply says that it doesn't matter because the monster is just making excuses to justify his defeat. The boss pants furiously and prepares another strike, while his heads begin to boast with pride about who they are and where they came from. Surprised by these statements, the protagonist opens his eyes in shock. The adventurers around are left speechless by what's happening in front of them. Finally, the Cerberus splits into 3 different monsters. Even Jin is surprised, reflecting that he has never seen anything like this during his playthroughs. With no time to think, the monster resumes launching attacks. Our hero becomes irritated with the repetitive attacks. However, he comes to the conclusion that in the end, it doesn't matter how many there are because he will be able to predict all their attacks. Now the divided monster declares loudly that the human will be the first to fall. Jin looks over at his shoulder in surprise. Suddenly, a boss appears, attacking multiple times at high speed. The adventurer grows concerned as his health bar is critically low. He cannot take even a single hit. Our protagonist continues to dodge, avoiding being struck at all costs. This situation is truly complicated for him. However, he sees it in a positive light and becomes even more excited. The heads keep taunting our hero non-stop, each one speaking independently. The adventurer remains highly alert with a serious expression, until an attack descends from the heavens towards him, with the wolf declaring that this will be the end. The demon appears right behind Jin, preparing to bite him. But before that happens, an ice explosion. A powerful spell is cast against one of the wolf's parts, with a woman appearing on the battlefield declaring that it is shameful for the demon god to engage in a 3-on-1 fight. The same mage from before returns, this time with an imposing stance and surrounded by lightning, provoking the monster. The Cerberus calls this situation irritating while struggling to stay on his feet. Then he suddenly charges at the mage. But before he can even get close, Jin unleashes a vorpal strike against the demon. Everyone witnesses the same sight, one of Cerberus's heads flying through the air. The protagonist is utterly exhausted and says that they need to finish this together as quickly as possible. Only 2 remain. A clear view confirms that the right head has been definitively defeated, with the red head celebrating that small victory with enthusiasm. However, Jinfrey is very tired from the fight, but he looks determined, saying that there's only a little more left. One of the monsters charges at Jin with pure hatred, calling him a bastard for ending his brother's life, while the other head rushes at the mage, declaring that he will tear her into 1,000 pieces. Both warriors seek to defend themselves from these attacks. Our hero asks if she is the ice magic user, and the blonde argues that yes, she does it by inverting fire magic. The demon present, still very enraged, prepares another blast of fire against the two, this time at point-blank range. At this, the protagonist asks Freyna, who specializes in fire magic, to wait just a little longer in that location. A skill is activated by the adventurer, Speed God skill. Quickly, Jinfrey surpasses his enemy with great style in a swift leap, and then he dashes past the mage to attack the other head, plunging his sword into its chest before it can even perceive the attack. A system window opens, saying that Helmbarrow's left body has been defeated. The adventurer is relieved that thanks to the poison, this fight ended a bit faster. However, he observes the magma pit, saying that the other one must have hidden in there again. He argues that everything will be fine from now on as long as they pay attention and protect themselves from the next attack. And the blonde steps forward, saying she will do her best to assist at this moment. Solar Call, the mage, uses his skill to increase the protagonist's fire resistance for another 3 minutes. Our hero is surprised to have received such a good buff at this moment. However, Freyna adds that the condition for using this spell is that she herself cannot use magic while it lasts. She wishes the protagonist luck as she steps back, saying that this is the most she can do at the moment. The protagonist thanks her and with a sincere smile, returns to battle. Beneath the lava, the boss is now in a much more closed-off position, as if his confidence has been drained. That monster laments how mere humans have put him in such a deplorable state and swears he will have his revenge. However, voices echo in that submerged place. A taunt is made against the demon. Jinfrey is right there beneath the lava, standing with his chest open. The wolf is utterly confused upon seeing the hero in that place, wondering how it is possible for a mere human to have managed to dive into a volcano, while the protagonist simply gestures for the monster to let it go. A scream echoes through the area, with the canine declaring that this is impossible. But Jin wastes no time and prepares another strike. The villain cannot believe that someone like him could be defeated in such a humiliating manner. But before he can finish his sentence, the hero dashes past him, slicing him like fine cheese. The volcano starts to enter a minor eruption, similar to a geyser. The nearby adventurers start getting anxious about what might have happened. The mage argues that it is not an eruption, but rather is actually Jinfrey, with a shout from the redhead confirming the hypothesis. Jin emerges from the lava pit, extremely exhausted, and the adventurers rush towards him, worried about his condition. They wonder if that hellish battle has finally ended while preparing healing potions. Jin confirms with relief that the demon god has been defeated, and now Frana's father, the flame mage, can finally rest in peace. A system window informs the protagonist that with the demon god fallen, experience points have been acquired. The boy celebrates joyfully for leveling up and earning a lot of gold, but that wasn't all. He also obtained 2 new items: Helmburrow's great claw and his massive fang. Finally, one of the items he was searching for is now in his hands. The blonde seeks to thank the boy, and the shorter one adds that without him, they wouldn't have survived. In the end, both of them thank everyone else for their help. The hero states that all this gratitude isn't necessary since he didn't do it just as a favor. Freyna adds that this was a team fight and the participants shared the spoils. The boy argues that everyone worked hard, so it was well deserved. Praising the upgrade the girl gave him, though, in her thoughts, the mage acknowledges that the result wouldn't have changed with or without her. Finally, the woman reveals that she obtained a B-rank rare item, the highest she has ever acquired, called the Scalding Rock. This catches the hero's attention, and he shouts that it's something he needs. He asks Freyna to trade items with him, offering the claws in exchange for the stone. The others around them fail to understand the reason behind this, since the rarity of the items was completely different. Freyna also questions the reason, as the protagonist's item was much rarer, but the boy insists that he needs the stone. Understanding the situation, the woman decides to give him the stone for free, which makes him incredibly happy. The adventurer celebrates, very happy to finally obtain this item. The woman watches with contentment, feeling empathy for the hero's happiness, and a system window opens, informing that Freyna now feels a slight attraction to Jin, just as Jita's now feels envy, making the protagonist quite uncomfortable. However, without getting distracted, he refocuses on his final goal and is pleased with the acquired stone. Now his next stop will be the second continent as he advances toward the Tower of Wishes. Then the rogue from the central city of the first continent begins to speak. The girl informs him that they have decided to return to the city to take care of some things in their father's absence. The boy approaches, saying that the next time they meet, he will be much stronger than the protagonist and thanks him for everything. Smiling, the hero simply says that he is looking forward to it. He has finally obtained the Scalding Rock, the material he needed from the first continent. As he walks through the streets, he thinks that since he has already sent money back home, he should soon consider his next destination. Shortly after, he enters the teleportation portal from the first to the second continent. People comment about the boy, questioning whether he was the one who defeated the demon god. Another person argues that it couldn't be him due to the hero's inferior equipment. A screen appears, notifying him that he has earned the title of First Demon God Slayer, and asks if he wants to go to the second continent. Without hesitation, he selects the option yes and begins teleporting. One of the gossipers is in shock, saying that he teleported, while his friend insists that he must be imagining things. The boy arrives in the central city of the second continent, known as the Prison of Desire in Second Life. At that moment, he receives a call from his sister. When he answers, he asks what happened, and his sister questions what he means by that. Irritated, she shouts, asking if he realizes how much money he sent her and demands to know where he is. She also asks if he is getting into trouble, and upon hearing this, he starts feeling nervous. He thinks about how he has been keeping this whole adventure thing a secret from both his sister and mother to avoid worrying them. Calling his sister his second mother, the hero explains that she shouldn't worry because he isn't doing anything illegal. At that moment, she informs him that he should already know their mother's condition has worsened. Sometime after hearing this, the protagonist is sitting alone on a bench. Feeling uneasy, he thinks that he needs money as soon as possible for his mother's treatment. Near the young man, one of the boys mentions an auction announcement for Supreme Elf's tier. Upon hearing this, Jinfrey starts paying attention to the conversation. Looking at the system, he realizes that this ingredient can be used to craft an elixir capable of curing his mother's illness. However, he realizes that it must cost hundreds of millions since it is being auctioned among the wealthy. At that moment, he decides that he must increase his capital. Sometime later in the second continent, inside the E-rank dungeon Eternal Snowfield, the hero thinks that the right way to make money is by raiding high-level dungeons, but this particular dungeon contains that guy. Sensing a presence, he recognizes Kate at level 66. Watching her sing, he murmurs that he has finally found her. Then he announces that he's going to use the items he collected along the way. Upon hearing this, the little cat looks startled and extremely hungry. Trying to win it over, the boy offers silver wine along with fresh fish. He also presents a fluffy bed for the little cat. Without hesitation, the cat decides to toss a gold coin into the air. This gold coin is an item that increases fortune and doubles the amount of money a person earns just by possessing it. Seeing that the cat is giving him this coin, the boy simply thanks it. Looking closely, Jinfrey remarks that this is a hidden item that can only be obtained by appeasing this little cat. Then he decides to hunt monsters immediately since he now has this item. Said and done, soon after he begins attacking multiple monsters to double his fortune. After defeating the boss, he states that he must have gathered enough. At the moment, he has 12,664,000 gold coins. Happily, he affirms that this is enough and that he should return to the city to gather a bit more. Sometime later in the city's club, several people are playing cards in a sort of casino. Seeing that he is in a place full of people obsessed with money, the hero states that in this situation, he won't need to hold back. At that moment, someone starts laughing uncontrollably. The bald man declares that he has won again. Then the system alerts that falsehood has been detected. This man has been accumulating 10 million through fraudulent activities. The boy realizes that he is dealing with a cheater and begins to think about how he will outsmart him. Looking to the side, the bald man notices the presence of another challenger. Smiling, he tells the boy that the dice are rolling in his favor and that he shouldn't run away when he starts losing. Awkwardly, the protagonist explains that it's his first time and he can understand the game blindly as they play. Upon hearing this, the bald man is pleased and says that the boy can go second if he wants, and that he can also set the betting amount. The system then warns that the bald man's accomplice is also a cheater. The game in question is Casino Queen, where 2 balls are rolled and each player picks 2 numbers of their choice. If they hit one number, they win half. If they hit both, they win double. And if no one hits, the game continues. As the game begins, the hero declares that he will choose red 36 and black 8. Then he announces that he will bet 10 million, which shocks both cheaters. Noticing the silence around him, the hero asks if he should repeat himself. With a confident tone, he repeats, saying he will choose red 36 and black 8, betting 10 million. Then he pressures the bald man to say his numbers because if he doesn't, once the balls stop, he will lose automatically. As expected, the boy ends up hitting the numbers, which leaves one of the accomplices in shock, questioning how he managed to do it. With a fake smile, the protagonist says that the balls will stop rolling soon. Growing very nervous, the bald man urges his friend to hurry up and call out the numbers. In his mind, the hero thinks that he knows all of them inside and out. He understands that the trafficker's job is to be the hunter, and that his skill, Eye of Accuracy, allows him to hit his targets with 100% precision. Casually, he declares that the numbers will come up again, red 36 and black 8. The duo's strategy was essentially for one of them to get close to the skill user and relay the numbers to the other. In shock, the bald man claims this is nonsense and accuses him of cheating, while his accomplice calls for the manager. Pointing his finger, he shouts that the kid is a cheater. At that moment, the manager asks the boy to step outside to discuss the matter. Analyzing the situation, the hero understands that the manager is also involved in this whole scheme. At that moment, the mustache man signals for his henchman to go after the boy. Quickly, the hero throws a table toward the accomplices. Meanwhile, another man tries to grab him from behind. But without much effort, the boy knocks him out with a single blow. Everyone is in shock at his incredible skill. However, the redhead grabs a bow and arrow and fires it toward the hero, while the bald man stands behind him, calling him a cheater. He charges at the boy, who effortlessly dodges and lands a kick. Then the boy throws the bald man toward his red-headed accomplice while asking who's next. Both the manager and his employee are left in shock. The blonde remarks that he matches the description of the guy from yesterday's news and could be the rookie who broke the baptismal ritual record. Surprised, the man wonders if it's really him. One of the men comments that he's already on the second continent and asks if that means he has already defeated the demon Helmbarrows. Not caring at all, the boy asks what they're doing and tells them to hurry up if they want to kick him out. At that moment, the manager kneels, apologizing, saying that he was mistaken and thinking the boy was a cheater. As he thinks to himself that if it's true, they wouldn't stand a chance against him here. But since he's just a brat, they might be able to get away with it. While Jeffrey glares at him with an intimidating aura, saying they can compensate him. He approaches, ordering to see all the money in this casino. Additionally, he demands the auction invitation, stating that he knows all their tricks and should consider this as money to keep quiet. He explains that if the man refuses, he will file a report with public security. The manager has no choice but to accept the demand. Sometime later at the central auction hall, with a massive amount of gold, the boy remarks that he expected more, but that this is enough, and that if he misses this chance, he doesn't know when the elf's tear will appear again. Confidently, he declares that he just needs to bid higher than everyone else for this item. Meanwhile, back at the casino, the manager laments in tears, saying that Brat really took everything from them. At that moment, he notices someone approaching. It is the branch master. During the auction presentation, the blonde announces that the branch master is a man, and that a total of 11 different items are being auctioned. He explains that everyone can expect many rare items and that all of them can be verified through the status window. The first item on the list is an orc sword, valued at 2 million. In this case, the boy needs 3 items to create the elixir for his mother. These are the elf's tear, the ice chimera fang, and the ancient red baroque. Smiling, he remembers that all 3 items are in this auction, meaning his time will be saved. As he scrolls through the options, he notices that the King Long wine is available. Shocked, he realizes that if he obtains this, he can craft the hidden equipment sooner than expected. The next item is the Ice Chimera Fang, so the boy places a bid of 1 million. However, another person bids 10 million, which is quite surprising. Even the protagonist is shocked as it is just an ice chimera fang. The one who made that bid was actually the casino manager. Laughing, the man wonders if the brat is happy now. Confused, Jinfrey questions whether that manager didn't already give him everything he asked for. While thinking that the Supreme Elf's tear is probably going to be the last item sold, he knows he can't let this chance slip away. In this case, he decides not to place any bids, and so the Ice Chimera Fang ends up being sold to the Wind Serpent Guild. The people at the auction grow nervous over this and start whispering anxiously. The hero knew that the man was a member of the Wind Serpent Guild when he read his mind, but didn't realize they were this influential. Then the blonde asks if it's that kid, and the manager simply confirms. Deeply irritated, he explains that the boy even stole an auction invitation and dared to use it publicly. The branch master then tells the manager that he should teach the boy a lesson. The ancient red clay is put up for auction, and the boy decides to bid 50 million. This surprises even the auctioneer. However, the manager places a bid 4 times higher. The hero then expected them to fight over this item, but never for it to reach 200 million. The system notifies him that it has detected malicious intent and explains that they are planning to interfere with all his bids as an act of revenge. Frustrated, the protagonist realizes that if things continue this way, he won't be able to obtain the Supreme Elf's tear. He begins thinking of a way to turn the situation around. Then he tries placing multiple bids on various items, but he loses all of them to the manager and his guild. The narrator states that this battle has turned into a one-on-one fight, and that there is nothing the angel or a client can do. Then, the manager bursts into laughter, questioning whether the boy really thinks he can go against the budget of a massive guild, calling him an idiot. But surprisingly, the hero smiles and says that the real idiot is him. Shortly after, the auctioneer announces that they are moving on to the final item of the auction. It is the Supreme Elf's tear. He explains that it is an extremely precious item and that they will start the bidding at 50 million. The hero immediately places a bid of 500 million, 10 times the starting amount. One of the men is shocked by the size of the opening bid. Confident, the protagonist thinks that he is finally going to get it and won't let his chance slip away. Irritated, the manager says that this won't change anything and that they should double the bid as well. The man declares that they will bid 1 billion, but the auctioneer asks him to wait a second. The blonde explains that the representatives of that guild will not be allowed to bid on this item. Upon hearing this, the boy starts laughing. Nervous, the blonde apologizes and informs them that the manager has reached the maximum bid limit. He explains that a bidder can only win up to 5 items and that the guild has already reached its victory limit. Hearing this, the manager is furious, stammering as he questions what kind of rule this is. He states that he is a regular participant in the event and that this is the first time he's ever heard of such a rule. However, it is explained that this is a special auction approved by the Adventurers Association, and although it is a hidden and unusual scenario, the rule preventing certain people from manipulating rare items is absolute. However, the hero theorizes that the manager didn't even realize that this was a special auction. The manager trembles with rage while the branch master remains silent. Then the blonde announces that the item has been sold. He congratulates the hero with the angel's halo, saying that he won the Supreme Elf's tear, while the hero asks not to be called that. Seeing his opponent's victory, the manager is furious, questioning whether he knew about this the entire time. As he prepares to cast a type of magic, he declares that he may have been pushed out of the casino before, but this time will be different. Standing up, the boy tells him to take this outside and not to drag innocent people into it. Calling out to the old manager, he tells him to stop casting that spell if he understands. However, the man thinks that if he fires now, he can easily kill the brat. Getting involved in the situation, the branch master says that the brat is right and that if they turn violent, the association will come after them. His subordinate tries to argue, but the boss's expression changes, making it clear that he won't repeat himself. So, he simply states that they should leave, and his subordinate agrees. A little while later, the hero realizes that the guild took 2 of the remaining items, but that, in exchange, they will be delivered to him, which is a good outcome. However, he admits that losing the King Long wine still stings a little. As he grumbles about various things, someone approaches him, saying that he looks peculiar. It is a girl who remarks that the halo above his head is something she has never seen before. Curious, she asks what kind of relationship he has with the Wind Serpent Guild, and if he knows the branch master. She explains that he is the long-haired man who is standing near the manager, the master of the second continental branch of the Wind Serpent Guild. Jinfrey says that he has some business with the guild, then asks who she is. She explains that she is an adventurer. At that moment, the system informs him that Mira has received a mission from the Adventurers Association to investigate the Wind Serpent Guild. Surprised, he realizes that it is an association mission, meaning she must be one of the 8 guardians. These are S-rank adventurers officially recognized by the association. They can accept requests from the association in exchange for great rewards. Recalling this, the girl feels nostalgic, remembering how she used to take on association requests just to pass the time. Jinfrey then explains that they have already left, and the girl says she will track them down but wants to ask one more thing first. Changing her posture entirely, she asks where he got the thing floating above his head. Shocked, the hero wonders if she really doesn't know about hidden equipment. Playing dumb, He asks if she means the thing above his head. Then the system informs him that his unusual equipment has awakened Mira's geek side. It also reveals that Mira thinks the angel's halo is cute and she wants one. Feeling uncomfortable from being stared at, she asks what's wrong. Nervous, the boy says that it's a long story and that will take a long conversation. Mira then says that it doesn't matter, she will just take a look herself. Leaving, she simply thanks the hero. Watching her go, the boy realizes that just from talking to her, he can tell she is likely one of the strongest among the 8 guardians. Meanwhile, Mira thinks that she has traveled all the way to the 7th continent and has never seen anything like this equipment before. As they gaze at each other, both wonder who the other really is. A full moon illuminates the battlefield of the 2nd continent as a loud explosion echoes through the A-rank dungeon. This is the site of a land devastated by the moonlight. The system window informs that the level 80 giant goblin boss has been defeated. With that, Jinfrey acquires a thick, greenish glove with multiple stitches around it. The A-rarity Goblin Thief Gauntlet. Effect: when an opponent is incapacitated, it opens the possibility to steal an item from their inventory and make it yours. The protagonist comments that leveling up in this area is easy, but that you should go after another piece of equipment before continuing his journey. This equipment would help him steal some items from other adventurers. 2 men can be seen in the distance, a knight in heavy armor and a short man in a suit beside him. The hero remarks that he needs the Goblin Thief Gauntlet to steal the King Long wine. That wine is a crucial part of crafting his next secret equipment. Thus, he has spent this time tracking these 2 adventurers using magic while waiting for the right moment to strike. In the background, a woman watches, wondering if Jin is also pursuing her targets. She also questions whether the protagonist could be part of the Wind Serpent Guild. But before they could react, the warrior and the modern one entered the fortress using a secret passage. The grand full moon, which previously illuminated a battlefield, now shines over a landscape filled with glowing white flowers. A system notification appears: private location, natural habitat of the Wind Serpent Guild. The formal one, feeling uncomfortable, asks the knight for his opinion on this investment. After a brief silence, the knight replies in a tedious tone that maybe it will be worth a good price. The man in the suit eagerly adds that yes, this could help the knight's investments and would speed up the process. Jin appears behind the shorter man, casually asking if flower cultivation is one of his hobbies. With a playful wave, the protagonist smirks mischievously, holding a flower in his hand, almost like an angel trying to flirt. Everyone is shocked, staring at Jin and questioning how he ended up there. Our hero states with certainty that this flower, the Moonlight Azalea, is used for magical doping. This revelation alarms everyone around. But Jin, unfazed, continues his statement, explaining that cultivating these plants is an illegal practice and is prohibited by the association. The man in the suit tries to explain himself, while the knight remains silent. Breaking the tension, the knight asks if Jinfrey is some kind of spy for the association. Jin mockingly denies it, saying he's not affiliated with them. He just wants the King Long wine, and if they hand it over, he'll keep this secret. The businessman explodes with anger, cursing and threatening the hero. Immediately, he prepares a massive attack, summoning black and purple lightning. However, in a flash, the protagonist appears right behind him, leaving the man stunned by this speed blitz. The woman observing the fight from a distance struggles to understand what is happening due to the distance. Jin mockingly comments that he's not here to fight, just to negotiate a fair price. The subordinate, speaking with authority, refuses to hand over the wine, threatening Jin with a dagger. Jin isn't usually one to snitch, but if they don't cooperate, he'll be forced to report them to the association. The shorter man, furious, charges at Jin, ready to stab him. Jinfrey effortlessly dodges the attack and strikes his opponent's neck, knocking him out instantly. The woman watching is stunned by the protagonist's mastery, while also questioning what kind of weapon he wields. At that moment, the knight becomes excited by the situation and sarcastically praises Jin's attitude. He then draws his sword, preparing for battle, declaring that he won't hold back. A system window appears, displaying the warrior's information. Simone Bradbury, Wind Serpent Guild, 2nd Continent Branch Master, level 97, occupation, warrior. Jinfrey, equally excited, prepares for battle. The woman observing is now intrigued by the protagonist's weapon, paying close attention to his movements. Both fighters lock eyes under the moonlight. With a rapid movement from both sides, the battle begins. Jinfrey versus Simone. Their swords collide, creating a thunderous clash in the middle of the arena. The hero comments that Simone's level is higher than his own, and the battle intensifies. Swift sword movements light up the fight like a dazzling show of lights. Jinfrey starts to realize that his opponent is no ordinary warrior. He sharpens his focus, adopting a tenser stance. The woman observes the fight intently, commenting that she's only heard reports praising Jin's combat skills. But she notes that in terms of brute strength, Simone's on another level. As the battle escalates, the protagonist is pushed back by one of Simone's strikes. The knight also acknowledges Jin's abilities, but arrogantly remarks that the kid has no chance of winning. He compares Jin's attitude to that of a fictional hero, scoffing that in the real world he won't magically get stronger out of nowhere to defeat the villain. Our protagonist, however, boldly declares that he doesn't care if he dies or whether he is a hero. All that matters is achieving his goal, and nothing will stop him. Simone insults him and charges forward, wielding his massive sword. Jinfrey is continuously attacked, forced into a defensive stance, and is pushed further back. However, Simone suddenly feels a strange sensation, as if something is about to happen. In the blink of an eye, the warrior is stunned, and the observer is left in disbelief. Both notice something shocking. Jin is defending and dodging all of Simone's attacks, with his eyes completely shut. Simone questions whether this is some kind of magical ability, but he has never seen anything like it before. The protagonist shows a small smile as he advances against Simone. After a collision between their swords with a precise movement, the hero manages to deflect Simone's blade. Finally, the system window opens, revealing this is the Halo of Lucifer, third ability unlocked. The system window states that the conditions to unlock the new ability have been met. For this, Jinfrey had to deflect attacks from his opponents. Combining the experience gained from his previous fight against the demon god with this one, the skill level has been maximized. The hero reflects that it was a good idea to have gathered experience before this battle, considering himself lucky to have leveled up now. While boasting, Jin is caught off guard. A strike hits him from behind. Simone moves with extreme ease, striking the hero without him noticing. The villain's sword pierces through the hero's body, causing his essence to violently gush out from his chest. Simone mocks Jin, saying that he let his guard down in a crucial moment. He then adds that in the real world, there will always be someone better than you. Simone is suddenly startled by a presence behind him. In the blink of an eye, Jinfrey appears behind him, mocking and questioning who is better than whom here. Simone is in disbelief at how it was possible for the protagonist to still be alive. While the villain questions how this could have happened, our hero taunts him with a superior posture. And before he can realize it, the knight receives the same strike that he had previously inflicted, being sliced from behind. As he enters a panic crisis, the truth is revealed. He was actually experiencing an illusion. This is the third ability of the Halo of Lucifer, Phantom Park. The system announces that this ability traps the opponent in illusions of an imaginary world, but with a cooldown time of 72 hours. Our protagonist begins his speech about who is truly the strongest at that moment, ultimately giving that title to the woman. The woman is surprised by the hero's perception, but remains undaunted. Jinfrey then states that he will not do anything against her, and that he is focused on his goal, exclaiming that he already understands the woman's objectives as a spy for the association. And before leaving, he uses his goblin thief glove to steal the villain's wine. King Long Wine, Rarity S. Finally calming down after obtaining the item, he hopes the next battle will be easier. The spy is outraged by Jinfrey's dirty trick, but she allows him to leave. She then begins to form hypotheses about how the ability she just witnessed works, concluding that it must be an equipment ability. But she is also puzzled, as these pieces of equipment were not listed by the association, reaching the conclusion that this hero is not just anyone. Arriving at the second continent, the protagonist heads toward his workshop to prepare the new item using the wine. Two enraged men are the first thing he sees. These men storm out of the place, shouting and fuming like two children, while the protagonist simply smiles at the situation. Upon entering the workshop, Jinfrey immediately defends himself from objects being thrown at him, showing an awkward smile. And there he is, the legendary blacksmith Tobar. The half-dwarf yells and curses at the hero, saying he won't make anything for him anymore. Jin tries to bargain with him, but the old man refuses to listen, until the protagonist reveals the rarest of wines. This finally catches the blacksmith's attention, who becomes very excited. Our hero starts teasing him after realizing he has the upper hand, but is rewarded with a few slaps. In his mind, the hero envisions his ultimate goal after delivering the wine to the blacksmith. A goal exclaimed by the system, Scorching Rock, a rank B item that, if delivered, would change something. The two sit down for a serious conversation. That old man begins to vent about his life while drinking with the protagonist, but our hero remains focused on his ultimate goal, to obtain his secret rank item. When the blacksmith finishes venting, the protagonist decides to sleep, only to wake up the next morning with news. An item was given to him by the blacksmith. Now Jin has a pair of black boots that emit a bluish energy. Name, Idaten's legs, secret rank. 3 abilities, free walk, storm teleport, and one still hidden, as indicated by the system. Excitedly, the hero sets off for his next objective, the Castle of Graces. As he prepares to leave, the blacksmith hands him a non-alcoholic sake, a rank item. Okay, I don't know about you, but I have no idea what a non-alcoholic sake would be. It's like saying alcohol-free alcohol, but whatever. The two bid each other farewell amicably, with the blacksmith wishing our hero good luck. Current location, S-rank dungeon, Castle of Graces. Our protagonist enters the castle with a small group of adventurers. He seems to be freezing, so he decides to drink the sake he was given to relieve the pressure. And wouldn't you know it, it worked. The drink made him feel warm again, and its effect lasts for nearly 2 hours. The other adventurers start questioning our boy about his clothing and also about how stupid he must be to come here with so little. Jinfrey simply ignores them, arguing with the system, saying he doesn't have time for this because he only has 2 hours to fight. That's the time limit in this dungeon. The penalty for staying past it is losing half of his belongings. The protagonist laments, remembering the times he overstayed and had to farm everything again, until he senses a massive magical presence. Realizing there were many other adventurers present, he decides to find the demon god as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, 2 adventurers farther away are struggling through a blizzard. They are having difficulty moving and unfortunately come face to face with a huge rabbit monster. Cunicorus, level 82 monster. They prepare for battle until they are interrupted by Jinfrey, who soars over them with a massive leap. Everyone stares in disbelief, including the monster, which has no idea what's happening. The protagonist reflects that this sensation is incredible, similar to flying a dream. This is the free walk ability, but our hero won't be able to relax for long. 2 more Cunicorus appear to attack him. However, level 82 is nothing to him now. Jinfrey simply slices them apart as if they were nothing. The NPCs around start wondering who that boy could be, the one they saw earlier. Upon noticing his halo, they conclude that he must be a wandering spirit that couldn't rest in peace. And together, the 2 men and the rabbit monster start praying to bless the one they believe to be a tormented spirit. Our hero's ability allows him to hear everything, and he swears he's going to beat the crap out of the system if it says anything about this. Demon God Olmut's castle. Finally, we're here. Our protagonist boasts about how little time it took him to reach the castle, just 5 minutes. But he is soon caught off guard when he notices the spy in the same place. He starts reasoning that she might also be looking for a secret piece of equipment. The woman quickly opens a passage into the castle, surprising our hero. Because that wasn't a secret passage, she simply broke the door open by pushing it with her fingers. The boy considers himself lucky to have run into this woman, as this opening made his job a lot easier, until several Kunikuras appear again to fight him. But they are all completely ignored as our hero activates his second ability, Storm Teleportation. Jin gets as close as possible to the demon god, but cannot advance beyond the 9th floor. There is a condition to proceed. He must defeat the sub-boss of this place. The hero brags about setting a new record for reaching this far so quickly, just as the door behind him closes. Olmut Castle, 7th floor. Adventurers are terrified as they are attacked by their superior. That superior states that he is doing this because the others are too slow and are getting in his way. Garuda Gaston. Occupation, swordsman. With a quick sword movement, the superior slices through one of his subordinates' jaws. Annoyed, he comments that they will be responsible for his punishment of having half his belongings taken. The villain prepares his strike, saying that the others are utterly useless, and that maybe they'd be better off dead. In the end, they are all slaughtered by the swordsman, one after another, begging for their lives. The villain spares a single subordinate and yells at him, demanding information about supplies and other soldiers. That subordinate only responds that he is doing the best he can. Garuda swings his sword menacingly, causing the boy to run off, saying he'll bring what is needed. Apparently, defeating other adventurers increases his time in the dungeon, so this is the villain's plan moving forward. The swordsman Garuda laments that his ally Summon was captured by the association girl, because that will greatly interfere with his future plans. However, he doesn't feel threatened, as in this location the dungeon's time limit serves as his shield. The Castle of Graces truly is a beautiful place. The protagonist continues advancing, defeating every monster he encounters along the way, all while bragging about his new equipment, which grants him incredible freedom of movement. But he is also a little uncomfortable with the presence of magical power right above him, because that power was even greater than that of the demon god himself. The protagonist continues advancing without difficulty until he reaches the intermediate boss. A door quickly opens and the spy was still there. Our warrior quickly hides, commenting that he almost forgot about the woman, but that the second magical power makes sense. The gray-haired woman finds it strange that there were no monsters nearby until 2 ice golems appear to attack her. These golems would be the intermediate boss. The woman remains calm and performs a simple summoning, Sylphid. Even for a summoner, performing this type of summoning requires great magical power. And indeed, the woman in a hurry defeats the monsters with a single combined strike from her summon. An energy circulates around the golems, until with a simple fist-closing motion, both explode. Jinfrey is surprised by the immense power of that woman, commenting that she is on a completely different level. After the intermediate boss is defeated, an ice door is revealed. This is the call for the battle against the demon god. The woman wastes no time and enters calmly. The protagonist reflects that she apparently is looking for someone and considers himself lucky that she does not desire the demon god. At that moment, the girl senses the presence of our hero, but when she looks in his direction, he is no longer there, concluding that perhaps it was just her imagination. Returning to focus on her objective, the protagonist finally finds himself face to face with the final boss. A boss surrounded by the corpses of other adventurers who came to face him before. Jin greets the monster while the system window opens. Second demon god Olmut, level 100, skill, Polar Death Cloak, reduces the power of all heroes present by 20%. The bluish monster laughs while observing Jinfrey, saying that he is just another life stockpile. An adventurer begs for his life in front of the swordsman Garuda. Garuda simply tells him to shut up and accept his fate. And with a swift swing of his sword, before he could realize it, it was deflected by someone. That someone was the spy who had been in the dungeon all along. Now Garuda has an unmatched opponent to face, along with 3 other elementals, Undyne of water, Ifrit of fire, and Sylphid of wind. The woman prepares for battle. The swordsman is surprised that the woman can summon 3 spirits at the same time, and immediately asks who she is. Her name is revealed, Mira Goldland. Being part of the 8 guardians of the association, she would put him in his place. Returning to our protagonist, the system informs us that the 3rd ability of the sword has been unlocked. The boss is extremely irritated by this situation, shouting and threatening the hero, saying he will reduce him to pure dust, bone by bone, then transforming, acquiring ice wings, and letting out several laughs while displaying his aerial maneuvers. But that does not scare the hero, because at that moment, he can also fly. He mocks the boss, saying that the view from above is truly beautiful, especially when he is above the monster. The demon is surprised, wondering how long the hero will remain so calm. Next, he summons a weapon, an enormous ice trident, Despia, attacking the hero with extreme speed without stopping. But remaining calm and with no difficulty at all, the hero simply says, 3rd ability of Centipede, Collapse. Collapse is an ability that makes the sword enter a liquid state, allowing it to take any shape. This means that its limitation is only the wielder's imagination. The monster boasts, saying that dodging endlessly will not get the hero anywhere, until the hero strikes the monster with a precise slash from a giant sword, thus easily finishing off the monster. Poison Gate of Hell. The second demon god Ormond has been defeated, and with plenty of time to spare, -1 hour and 21 minutes, setting a new record for Jinfrey. An adventurer who was there barely alive considers himself lucky that the hero saved him just before his time ran out. Now the protagonist has obtained another one of the materials, the Ice Chimera Fang. Now only the ancestral red clay remains for the protagonist to craft the elixir and save his mother. The entire castle begins to tremble due to the battle between the spy and the swordsman. The woman enchants the spell Illusory Blazing Breeze. The burst of fire heads toward the villain like a tower of flames. However, he deflects the attack with a simple sword movement. The gray-haired woman casts another spell, Furious Water Chain. But before the spell even reaches Garuda, he swiftly cuts through Mira's elemental. The hero watches the fight from afar, understanding that it is the cause of the tremors. Observing both fighters, he notes that the swordsman is also a formidable hero, wondering if he too was part of the guild. The villain mocks the guardian, saying that she should be ashamed to hold that title. Immediately after, he prepares another attack. A massive hurricane of orange lights engulfs the area. Winds blow in all directions. The sheer force of the wind pushes Mira backward. But before the swordsman could complete his attack against her, she had already dodged. The spy moves so fast that what remained was merely an afterimage, leaving the villain completely shocked by what had happened. She continues with a speech saying that the villain was foolish to choose this path and that she would show how an attack is truly done. Summon Spirit, the heaviest thunder spirit, Karen, a creature resembling a mix between a dragon, a horse, and a wolf, with yellow lightning surrounding it and a type of electric blue fire as its fur. Garuda is terrified by what he has just witnessed and begs the woman to stop her attacks. She questions the villain, asking if he had ever stopped when his victims pleaded. Then she finishes with the spell Thunder God. A gigantic electric tower crashes down on the swordsman, instantly defeating him. A miserable end for a miserable man. Jinfrey comments that it would be a nightmare to have her as an enemy while trying to stay hidden. But the woman quickly notices him, which makes him quite uncomfortable. The guardian says she does not mind him observing since he was not part of her mission. The protagonist wonders what mission that could be and why she was hunting this particular association. Our hero explains that he defeated the demon god, and that is why its presence is no longer there. They bid farewell, with Mira saying that they will likely meet again in the future. Elite Four Adventurers Association. We see that Mira successfully captured the criminal and delivered him to the cage. She is received by the vice president, who thanks her for her services and says that this will serve as a great example for future criminals. However, something was intriguing the princess. She was interested in a certain mysterious adventurer. And finally, we arrive at the third continent. Our hero is pleased that only one more demon god remains to be defeated. But he has a problem. His sword was running low on durability. And if he faced the demon god in this state, his sword would break and disappear forever. Therefore, he decides to seek out his next secret weapon. But first, the hero looks for lodging to stay in the city for the night. He requests 2 rooms, one in the north and another in the west. Jinfrey and the receptionist exchange glances, and with an approving look, the receptionist acknowledges and grants him access. A secret underground passage, a passage leading to a sort of fight club. And we are introduced to a boxer striking a victory pose. The strongest boxer in history, Mike Escaldant. As always, he remains quite extravagant. Our hero comments that at first he thought this was an NPC joke, but in reality he turned out to be quite a challenge. And to obtain his new weapon, he would need to defeat this opponent. A narrator introduces both fighters before the battle begins. Mike Escaldant versus Jinfrey Van. It is strictly forbidden to use any external weapons in this fight, and it must end within 3 minutes. All other rules follow standard boxing, points and knockouts. The first to reach 10 points wins. And without further delay, the bell rings. The first move comes from Mike, pushing Jin against the ropes, pressing him with his superior reach. The shorter fighter has no choice but to keep dodging while the massive opponent throws punch after punch. But the protagonist already knows this opponent and understands that he aims before attacking. Combined with his slow speed, dodging is easy. The narrator gets excited about the smaller fighter's skills, praising his footwork. Next, the hero throws a frontal jab at Mike, who dodges, surprised by Jin's speed. The protagonist now takes the lead in points, making both fighters stare at each other seriously. Mike tells the hero not to get too comfortable, as the fight is far from over. Jin becomes even more excited, saying he knows that well, and asks the champion not to hold back. The undefeated boxer grins, saying that now it's his time to shine. A massive hook comes toward Jinfrey, who dodges backward in shock while Mike analyzes him. Apparently, the shorter fighter would tire at some point, and the champion would show no mercy, continuing with punch after punch. Jin becomes immersed in thought, contemplating a strategy to win this fight. With every point scored, his opponent will become stronger, like an event where defeat is inevitable. His thoughts are interrupted by a relentless sequence of attacks from the larger fighter, pressuring him non-stop and pinning him against the ropes. While Mike boasts, our hero concludes that winning the fight is indeed impossible, but winning the battle is not. The secret to obtaining the hidden item is to survive the full 3 minutes. Jin begins to attack, forcing the champion to step backward while the clock keeps ticking. Both exchange blows one after another until the larger fighter lands a powerful uppercut squarely on our hero. It was a heavy hit, but Jinfrey remains standing. The undefeated champion exclaims that the hero has lasted quite a while, but this will be the end of the match. However, before his punch connects, Jin counters with a strike of his own, landing it perfectly. Mike becomes highly interested in our boy, praising him, while Jin responds that he won't go down so easily, and time runs out with the winner being Mike Escaldant, leading by 97 to 13 points. This was a rare spectacle for everyone present. Mike thanks our hero for lasting the entire fight, saying that boxing is a battle of souls and fists, and as gratitude, he offers him a gift. Before receiving it, the protagonist expresses his honor in accepting it. Finally, he acquires the fourth secret item, Soul Advantage Secret Rank. 3 abilities, Flame Fist, Counter X, and 1 still locked. Our protagonist now finds himself in the desert, boasting about his new item while admiring the vastness around him. This is the S-rank dungeon of the 3rd region, a desert ravaged by time. Our hero comments that this dungeon is unique because there are no other monsters besides the demon god. However, one must be either extremely lucky or unlucky to encounter him, because the chance of finding him is incredibly low, only 1%, causing many adventurers to become frustrated in the process. But our hero doesn't have time for that and complains that this is yet another shoddy system from a shoddy game. So he comes up with a plan. Instead of searching for the monster, he'll make the monster find him. The boy spots a coffin nearby and attempts to lift it. Before doing anything, he apologizes for disturbing the spirit. Then he opens the coffin, revealing a glowing mummy inside. Jinfrey then contemplates whether he should release the soul trapped within. And before he can finish his thought, the soul begins to glow even brighter. Then it flies away into the distance. At that moment, the hero's detection ability senses a strong presence nearby. A crushing aura causes the ground to tremble. A crack begins to open in the ground near our hero. This is the 3rd demon god, Jackal. He has finally revealed his form. The boy reflects on the dungeon's name, the Tomb of the Lost Soul, which reveals that this is a place where lost souls fall. Then the Jackal speaks, accusing the hero of desecrating that tomb. The system reveals his level minus 150. He's the one who guards the dead, the watcher of the fallen, the demon god Jackal. The monster accuses Jin of committing a grave sin by disturbing that soul, declaring that his punishment will be death, and now he intends to carry it out. But the hero does not flinch. He equips his new gloves, flashing a confident smile. Both of them call each other out for battle. The Jackal begins to weigh the hero's soul on his scales. Similar to how the god Anubis once did, he measures the weight of the protagonist's soul to determine his fate. On one side, the body. On the other, the soul. And the body turns out to be heavier. The system informs that the scales have judged his soul, and it returns to the protagonist. Along with a warning, all his stats have been reduced by 30%. The Jackal calls the boy a fool for daring to challenge him, but the hero already expected this, because this was the penalty for desecrating a soul. However, the protagonist was willing to endure it in order to find the boss faster. Now he must defeat the monster before it starts acting unpredictably. Black bullets. The monster fires several dark energy spears at our adventurer, who begins dodging them as usual. One by one, jumping and weaving through them, the hero appears to have no trouble handling the attack. But he realizes that his illusion magic does not work against this monster. Therefore, this battle will be a straightforward fistfight. The protagonist tries to land a punch on the demon, but it simply dodges. Once again, the monster uses its black bullets magic. The protagonist dodges and prepares an overhead punch. In a scene reminiscent of One Punch Man, the protagonist throws a powerful punch at the monster, which blocks it with its scepter. Immediately after, black bullets, this time at point-blank range, are fired at the protagonist. Jin dodges, moving backward. After recovering, he reflects that his body feels more exhausted than usual due to the debuff. But before he can think any further, he receives a call from Amelia, which makes him very worried about his mother. And once again, black bullets, this time nearly hitting the protagonist. He dodges once more. The hero struggles to focus on the battle because of the call, making the situation even more difficult. But he doesn't falter and tries to finish the fight as quickly as possible. Next, Black Vortex, another spell from the Jackal. The monster begins flying, the cosmic energy swirling around it. However, Jinfrey is out of patience and activates a new move, making his hand burst into flames. The demon is shocked to see that magic as if it recognizes it. The system then informs that this ability doubles Jin's strength but causes him to lose HP per second. Our hero lets out a battle cry using the ability Flame Fist. He prepares his strike. Then, a devastating punch lands squarely on the monster's face, sending it flying several meters backward. The boss tries to recover, and after doing so, glaring at the protagonist with pure hatred, he says that the attack was ridiculous and laughable. Jinfrey, now hovering above the monster in a superior stance, says that the attack sounds way cooler to him, insulting and threatening our protagonist just before casting another spell. The monster prepares itself. The boy begins to tremble, recognizing this attack. From the spell, a gigantic fist emerges from a kind of spatial portal, Meteor of the Night. The fist strikes the hero head-on in a spectral way, as if hitting him in multiple locations at once. Jin is launched far away, smashing through everything in his path. And this is the power of the Jackal's invisible hand. Jin finds himself in a pile of debris, beaten down, covered in smoke from both the flames and the impact. The protagonist reflects that he already expected something like this, since the monsters in this world have different new attacks compared to the originals. And once again, Amelia calls him. This makes him even more anxious and frustrated, wanting to end the fight quickly. Praising our hero, the Jackal says that Jin is smarter than he looks for managing to predict the attack. The protagonist tries to humbly thank him, but before he can continue, the monster prepares another attack. Jin's new ability might be strong, but it drains his HP over time, putting him in a dangerous situation. He was about to prepare another attack, but Amelia calls again. This distracts him, almost causing him to get hit. Due to the constant back-to-back calls, Jinfrey decides to teleport away to answer the phone, which completely catches the boss off guard. Not expecting this move, the boss is frustrated, unable to figure out where the hero went. The protagonist hides somewhere further away, and finally answers Amelia. He tries to ask why the urgency, but his sister cuts him off immediately, demanding to know where he is. Jin tries to explain that he doesn't have time for this, but then he is shocked by what she says. It's about their mother. The girl crying tells him that their mother doesn't have much time left and could pass away at any moment. Jin refuses to believe what he's hearing. His eyes fill with panic as Amelia desperately cries out. Suddenly appearing behind them, the boss declares that he should not be underestimated. Akira regrets being found so easily, but doesn't waste time. He ends the call saying that he will return as fast as possible. The monster comments that the protagonist won't get away so easily after committing such a terrible sin, and prepares another meteor of the night. However, our hero dodges effortlessly, his expression completely serious, charging his fist with flames once again. He apologizes to the monster before delivering his final blow. Then he activates Flame Fist to finish the fight. But unexpectedly, the monster blocks the attack with a single hand, showing no reaction at all. Calling the hero a fool, he exclaims that this attack alone won't even come close to defeating him. The protagonist stands in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. But before he can even think, another meteor of the night is launched at him. However, he dodges and begins preparing another trick. Flame Fist may double his attack, but it's time to activate another ability. Soul Bandage, Counter X, allows the user to return an attack to the opponent. The jackal is caught off guard and a punch slams into its snout. With a battle cry, the villain takes a direct full-force punch, his face disfigured as he is sent flying. The villain spins through the air multiple times, until finally he crashes headfirst into a rock in the distance. In his final breath, the demon spits out blood everywhere after smashing his head against the rock. A trail of destruction marks the end of the fight, a strike doubled by Jin's attack and tripled by the monster's own force. He had warned that this would be the end. Demon God Jackal, level 150, defeated. Now with everything he needs, our hero rushes home to see his mother. First continent, that familiar place. A nun, a man, and a girl are all gathered around the ailing woman. Jinfrey bursts through the door, shouting for Amelia, and immediately asks about his mother. Amelia welcomes him, but before she can speak, the doctor informs him that Jin's mother is in her final stages. She will not survive the disease much longer. The woman is truly in a dire state, with dark spots covering her body. Apparently, her mana deficiency has left her with low blood pressure, which would soon lead to cardiac arrest. Not even the best doctors in the kingdom could save her at this point. Amelia, in tears, calls out to her mother, but Jinfrey immediately reassures her, saying that everything will be fine, because he will not let his mother die here. He will heal her, no matter what. Everyone stares at him, shocked, unable to comprehend how he could possibly do that. Our hero spends all of his remaining points to invest in intelligence status. The system notifies him that his alchemy level has now reached 250. Using all the materials he had gathered up to this point, the protagonist begins crafting a new item. Universal Elixir, SS Rarity, an item capable of curing any disease or negative effect. At last, the elixir that will save his mother is complete. The doctor, watching in disbelief, comments that he had once studied this elixir but always thought it was a legend. Amelia, completely shocked by what she is witnessing, asks how her brother managed to obtain something like this. Jin, in a hurry, tells her he will explain everything later. Then he approaches his mother. Seeing the woman nearly devoid of hope, he reflects that with this level of alchemy, he can create incredible items, and that one of them would be this elixir, just in time to save her. As he gently gives her the elixir to drink, he pleads for her to wake up, holding her in his arms while Amelia watches in the background, and slowly his mother opens her eyes, seeing her two children right in front of her. Finally recovered, she wonders what happened. But before she can say anything, her daughter cries out her name, and leaps into her arms, hugging her with love and joy. Jin, his face filled with relief, smiles, finally seeing his mother healthy again, asking how she is feeling, while she once again wonders how all of this happened. His mother then begins to piece together her memories, realizing that the last thing she remembers was being in bed. Amelia, frustrated, yells that everyone was incredibly worried about her, and that Jin was the one who saved her. Their mother still struggles to understand the situation, having just woken up from a coma. However, the doctor steps in to explain a little more about the elixir, which leaves the mother stunned. How had her son managed to obtain something so valuable? Our hero simply reassures her that she doesn't need to worry about that, because seeing her healthy is all that matters, until suddenly the woman lets out a loud yell, telling them not to get ahead of themselves. The siblings, confused, look at her uncomfortably, not understanding the reason for her anger. Their mother shouts Jinfrey's name, pointing at him, and begins scolding him, complaining that he abandoned them without explaining anything. Jin tries to argue that that's not what happened, but he is cut off by his mother, who refuses to hear his excuses. Our protagonist simply sits in a corner, accepting the lecture that's coming his way. The doctor bids farewell to the family, while the mother continues yelling non-stop. Amelia tries to defend Jin, explaining that he became an adventurer just to save her, and the protagonist starts whining, both happy and sad at the same time, saying that the elixir worked a little too well. His mother, finally calming down a little, says that she understands the situation, but she still doesn't know how she would have reacted if her son had gotten hurt because of his reckless actions. Jin's face softens, feeling fulfilled as he listens to his mother's words, and she adds that since he's safe, there's no problem anymore, and orders him to go out and defeat some demons or whatever it is he wants to do. Everyone is left in disbelief at what she just said, not understanding the meaning of it all. And the lady, completely bewildered, asks Jin how long he had been thinking about the same thing. She says that her son has the same eyes as her husband and acknowledges that now he is truly happy. Our hero confirms his mother's words, who tells him that he should follow his dream because now she is fine. But there would be some conditions. The first was that he must always send news, and the second was that he must not die, no matter what. I think even I could promise that second one if asked. Jin simply agrees and makes the promise. But finally, his mother thanks him with a warm hug, and she asks him to be careful out there. Jin says goodbye, promising to take care of himself, telling his family that he would see them again. Everyone looks at this end of a journey with joy, as a beautiful landscape gives us a reflective view of the meaning of all this. Jinfrey reflects that maybe one day, by eliminating all the evil creatures, peace will finally come to our world. But if that doesn't happen, if it's not possible, maybe he needs to do more than just that. Maybe something beyond simply defeating some demons, something that might be hidden in his past life. Then we are introduced to the Colosseum of the Third Region, the Olympic battle arena. Our hero walks through the crowd with a smile on his face as he observes his surroundings. A narrator announces the beginning of the intercontinental event, the 11th one, to determine the strongest. A crowd roars with excitement, while our protagonist covers his ears and is happy to see so much enthusiasm and energy. We get an explanation of how this tournament works. In order to enter, a participant must be at least level 150, and if they exceed this level, they would be adjusted to the same, but acquired items would remain unrestricted. Our protagonist continues walking through the crowd while reflecting on his journey and the prize of that event. However, something catches his attention. The other adventurers present there also seem to be quite strong. A man in a blue cloak with black hair, and two other figures, an elderly gray-haired man and someone in the background with a cloak covering their face. The adventurer realizes that those present were not seeking money, but rather an SS rank item, a scroll of occupation change. However, before he can think more about it, the event begins, marking the mana and attack levels of everyone present. To determine the ranking of each participant, the top 8 would be transferred to the main tournament, in the end placing his right hand on a magic circle. Their mana begins to be scanned. Finally, the results appear on a big screen in front of everyone. Jin's ranking is extremely low, last place out of 2,189 participants. Our hero reflects that because of his class, his mana remains low, in addition to the fact that his level is still not 150. But next, they begin measuring attack power. A kind of briefcase with a fist icon appears in front of everyone, and this would be the new way to measure this other power parameter. Our protagonist gets anxious, awaiting his result. Then he prepares his strongest attack, Fire Fist. This magic would double his attack, so he was confident. Combining it with his counter X, he prepares an extreme punch with 6 times the power. Everyone around starts watching, shocked by the scene. One adventurer questions another, not understanding how this is possible. However, the big screen interrupts them all, announcing that it will now present the results. Jinfrey in first place, followed by Luda, Jeneth, Ringe, and Sibo. Our protagonist comments that he was a bit nervous about doing so poorly in the first test, but feels better now. Then the announcer continues, adding that after balancing the results, the rankings have changed. Grinjud first, followed by Rami, Polmir, Jinfried, Sibo, Jeneth, Liuda, and Ozishan. The hero looks at the result contentedly, while everyone around him is irritated. Someone calls Jin's attention. That someone is Mira, annoyed that he keeps ending up in the same place as her. Jin is also confused, shouting at her for being on top of him again. Mira asks if he didn't hear what she said, questioning why he is always where she is. The protagonist replies that he has nothing to do with that. However, Mira starts reflecting on everything she just saw, the strange equipment, and that mysterious boy. She really wants to learn more about him, but Jin breaks the moment by asking if she's also looking for the scroll. The spy simply responds that yes, she is interested because after getting stronger, there's no escaping that desire. Our hero comes to the conclusion that Mira is actually Rami, changing her name so she wouldn't be recognized. And the event's narrator exclaims that the event is finally about to begin. Now with the 8 selected participants, the match order is set. The winner takes the gold and the scroll. Jin comments that he will fight Mira if he wins the first round. But Mira doesn't seem to care about that. She simply wishes him good luck and walks away with a sulky expression. Jinfrey appears to dislike her attitude but ignores it. The fight is about to begin, and his opponent seems concerned about Jin's ranking results. Mocking and doubting our hero's abilities, the audience continues to not take him seriously, but he doesn't pay much attention to it. His opponent now is Gringe Mistar, who also has the alchemist occupation. The audience comments that this Gringe is actually the leader of the Silver Demons Guild, someone extremely powerful, a man who crafts his own equipment to ensure victory. Jin has no chance against him. The narrator announces the start of the fight, now with both fighters present. Jin looks at his opponent with a blank stare, not taking him too seriously. Meanwhile, the alchemist complains about having to fight someone so mediocre. However, before he can finish his sentence, Jin vanishes from his sight, landing a direct flaming fist right under his chin, followed by multiple consecutive punches, not stopping for a second. The alchemist can't even react, only taking one hit after another, finishing with our protagonist delivering a spinning kick that sends him flying, crashing into a wall at the stadium's edge, shattering it into several pieces. The alchemist alchemist is completely wrecked and unable to even stand. The audience is left in shock at what just happened. They start shouting questions, wondering how this is even possible. The narrator declares the fight over. Grinch has been defeated. Our protagonist wonders if he might have gone too hard on the poor guy. Mira observes Jin's new item, now even more intrigued by the boy. But without time to reflect, the second round begins, Mira versus Azushan. The audience, filled with black pills, complains about the presence of a woman on the battlefield, saying this was only for men. They tell her to go back where she came from, using the word woman as an insult. Our hero starts to lose his vibe, feeling disheartened by so much nonsense. But the narrator wastes no time and starts the next fight. The old man from before is now the spy's opponent. He sarcastically compliments her appearance, making Mira look at him with some disdain. Then, like a typical old pervert, he says he'll go easy on her if she lets him touch a certain part. But before he can finish his sentence, Mira summons two of her elementals, Ifrit and Sylphid. With a single attack, uncontrolled heat breath. A chorus of screams echoes through the arena as the audience stares in shock at the situation. And just like that, it's over. The winner is none other than Rami Alias. Even Jin, watching from the sidelines, is impressed by how quickly the fight ended. And a little later, after the first rounds are over, the announcement of the next battles begins. These will be the semifinal participants: Jinfree Van Raid versus Rami Alias, and Liuta Factor versus Geneth Sumerian. The protagonist looks at Sumerian with some suspicion, as if expecting that this man has something more than the other participants, saying that this man is as strong as Mira or maybe even stronger. The narrator cuts the tension, announcing the next battle, Jinfree versus Rami, both now face to face. The spy taunts our boy, saying there's still time for him to run away. But the young man remains unfazed, saying this is a great opportunity to settle who is actually stalking who here. Then the battle begins. Summoning of elementals. Ifrit is the woman's first move. Jin prepares for the attack, positioning himself in a defensive stance. The audience that was previously mocking the girl now chants her name in a coordinated cheer. The protagonist reflects that just one elemental would already be a problem, but this girl is different. Mira then summons two more elementals, the electric dragon and the hydromancer mermaid. The adventurer remembers seeing her do this before, 3 simultaneous summons, and that this would be a problem for him. The narrator screams that this is the first time he's ever seen something like this, shouting for Mira to finish off the boy. The girl tells Jin that she knows his abilities, so she won't hold back. Jinfree thanks her for the honor while shifting into a more offensive stance. Water Dragon Wave marks the first elemental attack. Our protagonist prepares to counter the attack, but it dissipates right in front of him. In a quick reaction, Jin dodges, realizing that this attack was meant to catch him by surprise from another angle. Thunder Shell is the second ability used by Mira. The dragon positions itself to attack Jin, who carefully observes its movement. Our hero seems surprised by the sheer speed of the summoning. The audience is impressed by the spectacle unfolding before them, and Jin barely avoids a blow that nearly destroyed a third of the arena. He considers himself lucky for dodging it, as that could have been the end of him if it had landed. But before he can think about anything else, Flame Bomb is the third attack used by the spy. However, this time the hero manages to react with his fire fist, deflecting the woman's magic. She looks at Jin in surprise, a surprise that quickly turns into anger. The protagonist seems to be getting scared by the situation. It even looks like the girl wants to kill him. This woman is strange, but it's undeniable that she is extremely strong, capable of ending the fight in an instant. Mira comments that perhaps she overestimated the adventurer, but Jin refutes her, saying that all she knows how to do is summon and give orders, and the one who was actually overestimating someone was himself. Mira gets excited by this statement, saying she will put Jin in his place. The crowd erupts into a battle cry, demanding that the girl finish him off. And right after, they start placing their bets, with almost everyone betting on the woman's victory, which irritates our protagonist a little. Jin just laments that they are too loud and annoying, but he tries to ignore them. Mira reflects that she has heard about the people from this place, but didn't expect them to be so irritating. She flashes a smile at Jinfree, who returns the favor with an annoyed look. But there's no time for that. The woman commands her summon, Karen, to finish this quickly. The dragon charges head-on against our hero, and here comes another attack, Thunder God. A massive lightning bolt falls from the sky, with Jin barely dodging it at the last second. However, he didn't expect to land right in front of another summon, Undine, who is preparing another strike. Jinfree believes that despite there being 3 summons, he should stay calm and wait for an opportunity to counterattack. So he starts running, drawing the attention of 2 summons with him, saying that despite being frustrating, Mira is very strong as he glances at her. Mira observes everything confidently while Ifrit stands guard behind her, which of course means she knows Jin's attacks and is aware that Ifrit can defend her from them. Combined with 2 elementals attacking the boy without pause, everything becomes extremely difficult to handle. Our protagonist starts losing patience and decides to go on the offensive once and for all. He uses his teleportation to shake off his attackers. This surprises the woman as she didn't know he had this ability. Jinfree appears right beside her, already charging a flaming punch. A punch coming at extreme speed, heading straight for the spy. She notices the attack at the very last moment. Our hero was already boasting about finally landing a hit on her, but she vanishes before his eyes in an extremely fast movement, similar to what she had done against the swordsman. And with a confident shout, Whirlwind Blade is the next spell cast. The aquatic elemental charges our hero, He is surprised by how fast this attack arrived, realizing that the image of Mira was just an illusion that transmuted into this new elemental. An attack falls upon Jinfrey with extreme brutality. A silence covers the arena as only steam can be seen. The audience can't even comprehend what just happened, while Mira reflects that our hero wouldn't be able to withstand something like that. However, she is caught off guard, because Jinfrey is still standing. A strong wind sweeps through the entire arena, clearing away the steam that had been covering him. Our hero gasps for breath, saying that was close. If he hadn't used teleportation, it would have been over. Mira cannot believe what she just saw, unable to understand how he managed to dodge. Jin, now excited, says that it's not over yet as he prepares another flaming punch. He charges toward the spy in an uncontrolled rush, while Mira wonders how he can use so many powerful abilities without pause. But without wasting time, she orders Ifrit to protect her. The protagonist prepares his strike against the elemental, who waits cautiously for his movements. They lock eyes, until both fists collide, canceling each other's attacks. The woman keeps arguing that it's useless for the hero to continue this way because she can simply nullify this move. However, Jin was already prepared for that, and in succession he begins to strike Ifrit with multiple blows, one after another. The woman tries to argue that it would be useless. No matter how many times he tried, the attacks would cancel each other out. Both a cry to the wind. Jinfrey removes the gloves from his hands. Mira is surprised by this action, but she already has an idea of what is coming. Summoning his sword, the hero prepares his new strategy. A weapon with a poison attribute, something the woman could not neutralize. He quickly charges at her in a frantic rhythm. Then he activates his liquefaction ability, transforming his sword into multiple centipedes. A centipede that captures the woman, followed by the exclamation, "Hunter legs cannon." Mira grits her teeth, frustrated that she can no longer control her summons. And with a snap of a finger and a cry to the skies, her legs are the last thing Jin sees, before he analyzes the durability of his weapon. A durability that is practically at its limit. Raimi is unable to continue the battle. Jinfrey is the winner. He retracts his weapon. Then he catches the girl in his arms to prevent a rough fall. The spy slowly opens her eyes, and the entire audience is frustrated with the result, as they had all bet against the hero. Both fighters accept the outcome of the battle. In the end, the protagonist offers the girl some of the healing elixir he made. Turning his back, he bids her farewell. In the end, Mira admits that the protagonist is not someone to be underestimated, and a system window appears, stating that Mira has been captivated by Jin's equipment. The woman starts to become fascinated by all of the boy's abilities, saying that she cannot control her excitement, with the narrator continuing, announcing the next round. Ryuta Factor versus Jin's Sumerian. Both are now on the battlefield. The monk boasts that the fight will be over in an instant. However, his opponent is not intimidated by this. Jin feels an extreme pressure from this situation, and with a look from both former fighters, the fight ends before anyone can even understand what just happened. Winner, Jin's Sumerian. Occupation, Master Swordsman. He glances sideways at the protagonist, then both exchange glances in the end. Jin is terrified that he has to face this opponent in his final battle, with the narrator exclaiming that yes, this will be his fate. Jinfrey on one side and Jin's on the opposite. The final round of the tournament is about to begin, both fighters taking a step forward. Mira mockingly tells Jin to try not to die in the arena, while the protagonist tells her to mind her own business. Both stare at each other. A silence from both sides echoes throughout the place. Now, with everyone prepared, the round begins. Once again, Jin says his iconic phrase, "Everything will end in an instant." Our hero comments that he looks really cool in that pose, but that he is overestimating himself too much. Most likely, their skill levels are similar, so the best scenario is to end this quickly. Third ability, Battle Title. A system window appears, Battle Title, for 3 minutes. All of the user's stats are doubled. The way to unlock the third ability is simply by using the first and second ones. His stats increase uncontrollably, but at a high cost. If the opponent is not defeated within 3 minutes, the bonuses will be lost. A purple aura surrounds Jeans, who states that he will not waste any more time in this fight. Jeans moves rapidly toward the boy, swinging his sword in a lateral slash aimed at his neck. However, Jin dodges by ducking and stepping back. The pressure does not subside. Jeans continues to strike one blow after another. Jin laments that his opponent's ability is extremely difficult to deal with, as well as the fact that his opponent himself is on another level. Not understanding why this fighter wants the occupation change scroll so badly, since this scroll would unlock new abilities and grant new stats. The protagonist continues trying to keep up with his opponent's pace with extreme difficulty, and Jean still seems very calm about the situation, as if he is not under any pressure at all. With a quick sideways sword strike from Jeans, Jin leaps to dodge, landing right behind him. Then he dashes rapidly toward him, attacking relentlessly. But he ends up missing his strike. Jeans evades it with extreme ease. His absurd speed even leaves afterimages in his wake. The swordsman asks if this is all his opponent has to offer. He calls him as slow as a mere fly. Jin responds to these attacks with silence, but in his mind he is deeply concerned. This swordsman is really a problem. Round 1 has ended. Now round 2 begins, and the protagonist's stats have increased. Jeans notices the change, and the protagonist, after his stats increase, quickly charges at the swordsman, confident that there is no way his opponent can remain calm now. However, Jeans refutes this, saying that even though Jin has become faster, he is still slow. Our hero tries to counterattack the swordsman, but he fails. The samurai was already expecting something like this, calling his opponent knave. An explosion of energy covers the entire arena, and our last sight is of Jin being thrown far away, screaming in pain. Mira is surprised by this outcome. Trying to get up from the ground, Jinfrey says he didn't expect genes to be this strong. But incredibly, before he can take any action, Radiant Flash, a new ability, is used by the Master. His sword begins to shine, as do several bluish lightning bolts that now surround him. A burst of energy is launched at the hero, and an explosion occurs at the edge of the arena, making a gigantic impact. However, the boy escapes once again using his teleportation, immediately returning to the arena. This was the hardest ability to master for a swordsman. Our protagonist, witnessing it, grows very concerned about what might happen next. The audience goes wild over the spectacle they are witnessing, while Mira watches the fight, curious to see how our hero will get out of this situation. Both fighters stare at each other. Round 2 ends, round 3 begins, and once again, Jin becomes even stronger. This is the final round. Our protagonist takes a deep breath, preparing for battle. Now it's all or nothing. He activates the Fire Fists ability. The hero displays his flaming fists to his opponent. However, the swordsman is not intimidated. He understands that the atmosphere has changed, but he remains confident. Mira states that the next attack will be the end of everything. Both fighters charge at each other, a side punch and a finishing strike from above, while Jean shouts another one of his attacks, Temporal Light. Jinfrey manages to dodge the strike, appearing behind Jean's. He prepares another punch. However, Jean's also dodges. The fight intensifies between the two fighters, both completely focused. Jin takes advantage of his position to summon his sword once again. This surprises the swordsman. No time is wasted. The protagonist activates his ability to transmute the sword. Now the sword transforms into several stones surrounding his opponent. An opponent who quickly recognizes that these stones are poisonous. However, that was not the main plan. Because of this distraction, the master is left open. Jin lands a precise hit right in the pit of his stomach with a flaming punch. The attack is truly effective, with Jin stating that now the fight will come to an end. James starts to panic, trying to hit the protagonist one more time. However, Jin vanishes right before his eyes, and reappears above his head. There was still one last ability for Jin to unleash, Dragon God's Tempest. Condition: fight against an occupation master. Jeans watches the adventurer soar, surrounded by fierce winds, and then a massive Chinese dragon appears right before him. Panicking, he tries to dodge the attack, but he is struck directly, launched far away, crashing headfirst into a wall. Now completely defeated on the other side of the arena, a trail of destruction follows him. He can no longer stand up. Jean's Cimmerian is incapacitated. Jinfrey Van Raid wins the fight. Our hero celebrates, relieved that he won just in time as his equipment was nearly breaking. Mira watches everything from the background, and then turns her back on the situation, reflecting on the fact that she must become even stronger. And the title of champion goes to Jinfrey, along with the tournament prizes. S-rank dungeon, Altar of Ruvenim's Ruins. The scroll is presented to the boy, who celebrates finally obtaining it. Without wasting any time, he takes it in his hands. However, the protagonist comments that he has other plans for this item, pressing Decline Evolution, immediately confirming his decision. The system asks if the protagonist would like to equip this item instead of using it. Excited, he selects yes, achieving what he wanted. Then the scroll begins to glow with a golden light. This was a secret command from the ruins. Following this sequence of actions unlocks a hidden event. The scroll starts to distort in space, right in front of the adventurer, and then it transforms into another item, Necklace of Memories. Now the 5th secret item is in our hero's possession. He begins to recall the incredible journey he has had and the challenges he has overcome. All of it leading to this moment. Ready to depart for the 4th continent, he heads toward a portal. Climbing on top of it, he affirms that this continent is completely different from all the others, and that the items obtained here are much better. He had no more reason to wait, so he uses teleportation. An image of an extremely bright sun appears. This is the 4th continent, a beach full of excitement and activity, packed with, let's say, very attractive women, and also extremely athletic men, like in a beer commercial. Jinfrey comments that this place is quite dangerous, as he observes everyone enjoying themselves. He adds that this place is like a paradise where an adventurer could finally rest. However, people who enter might get lost in so much pleasure and forget to return to their lives. Someone calls the hero's attention, calling out to him. A kind of Nekomimi, a half-cat man with grayish hair, stands in front of Jin. Jin recognizes this species known as the ocean wolves, this one in particular being Kukuru, a guide sent by the resort. He happily says that he can show the entire place to our protagonist, and a system window opens stating that Kukuru's occupation is bandit and thief. The Nico asks what our hero's name is, to which he sincerely replies, Jinfrey, but he exclaims that he doesn't need a guide at all. However, the wolf clings to one of the protagonist's arms, joyfully saying his name and insisting that he will show him everything. Jin tries to escape, saying that he has no time for this kind of thing. The little guy gets bored with the situation and simply tells the boy to manage on his own then. He finishes by giving him a pat on the shoulder, and with a little wave, he walks away. Jin watches this behavior from a distance while the wolf walks away with a mischievous smile. Our hero finds the situation very strange but prefers to ignore it and continue walking. However, before doing so, he decides to take one last check on the condition of his equipment. Surprised, he suddenly realizes something. One of his items is missing. The gloves have been stolen. But after thinking for just 5 seconds, he understands. The short guy was a pickpocket. Well, it's not like the system hadn't already warned him, but still. The wolf walks away, celebrating his theft. He hums a cheerful little tune, happy to have snagged a good weapon, and he finishes by already declaring that he's going to sell it. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.